OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
All right. Owen Shane, how are you getting on?
Very well. How are things, Adrian?
All good, yeah. We're on after the morning after the night before, and huge excitement in the Ireland camp after we go to Wembley and stuff them 3-0, or possibly not really. It was a tough watch last night. It was an good opening 15 minutes, and then kind of went to pot after that. And Matt Doherty's comments this morning kind of hit the nail on the head. It was certainly something I was feeling looking at the game. I actually thought maybe after they got 1-0 down, the heads dropped. Like, we know we can't score goals, and at that point the team know that we really can't get back into it. He said it was embarrassing, and that's coming off the pitch, and that was the sort of thing that's grabbed the headlines. But it was more some of the other stuff that he said after the game, and we might try and kick off with that if we can. I think we might have the clip of Matt Doherty speaking after the game last night.
Yeah, obviously practice and training. Look, people have just got to do it themselves in their own mind. Just believe that when they have the chance that they're gonna score. Have no doubt about it at all. I think it's more of maybe a mentality thing, because we're getting in the positions. Whether we really think that once we're there that the ball's going to go in, or do we really have the belief to maybe make that run into a position that like if you're a bit tired, or do we have the vision to see the run in the first place? So look, it's tough. Like, it's not nice feeling playing all these games and not scoring any goals. Look, it's everybody. Whoever gets the chance, whether it's us from a defenders from a set piece, or a bit of playing in the game, we just need to have that focus and belief that when the chance comes, that we're going to put it in the net. It's just frustrating, and look, obviously it's disappointing. It's a bit embarrassing I feel a bit embarrassed sometimes when I come off the pitch, because we're just losing games and not scoring goals and conceding goals. So it's not nice.
No, not nice. He also said that he said you can still work hard and get around the pitch. I felt like we gave up a little bit tonight. Once the second goal went in, like, there was no way of anything possibly good could have happened in the game. That was kind of sums it up on.
I do kind of like Matt Doherty's attitude there, that there is a real positive sense of arrogance about Matt Doherty, that he expects better from the team that he plays in, because he's playing at a higher level than basically the entire Ireland squad at the moment. And that, I think, hearing that this morning is a good thing. And I know Stephen Kenny came out after the game, after those comments indeed, last night, and said as well that it's good that Matt Doherty is saying these sort of things, and he'd be worried if people weren't concerned about the defeat. And I'm with Stephen Kenny on that as well. Like, we do, without something like Giovanni Trapattoni, we do have to be aware of what Ireland were up against last night. Like, they have a player in Jack Grealish who is in the conversation already for the Premier League Footballer of the Year. On the other wing, they have a player who Manchester United couldn't decide whether they wanted to spend 90 million or 120 million euro on. We're hoping to see good things from people who play for Preston North End and Wickham, with all due respect to them. And again, without trying to sound like Trap, we probably should have expected a little bit less from Ireland last night than whatever it is that we were expecting. It doesn't help that John Egan goes off early. It doesn't help that your so-called best defender is getting beaten to a header by Harry Maguire at a very headable level inside his own box at shoulder height, really. And that is how you
consistently as well, not just for the goal.
Not just for the goal is right. Yeah, you're right on that. And he's been poor for a while. He's had a poor season. I thought he had a very good international break during the last spell when it mattered most, for that Slovakia game and for that period. Obviously, for Stephen Kenny's first couple of games, he wasn't great, and he's just struggling with his form at the moment. That will come back, hopefully, and like, you'd have to definitely back him that it will come back over the next little while. This was desperate timing to be playing England last night. We can't get away from that fact. It was desperate timing. Ireland are at a low ebb at the moment, and they've also been battered by poor enough luck as well. You can't be blaming luck for a defeat, but you can point to luck for a reason why a defeat can be particularly bad, or look particularly bad. And Matt Doherty, one of potentially Ireland's better players last night, was playing out of position, and that kind of sums it all up. And like, England are on a different stratosphere to Ireland right now, and maybe we should have just realised that a little bit more acutely before last night.
I think 3-0 at Wembley against England, and to be fair, it wasn't necessarily either their first team, but 3-0 against England at Wembley is actually all right. There's no disgrace in that at all. It was more the flatness of one of the things was Matt Doherty talking, like, fair play to him for coming out and just calling it like it was afterwards. That definitely needs to be said. But he was talking about we're just not converting the chances. Like, even his manager was admitting last night, there are no chances. There really aren't. And one of the biggest concerns that I'd have would be, and it was interesting, I watched some of the coverage on ITV last night, and they were talking about, the presenter was asking the pundits, amongst whom obviously was Roy Keane, about Adam Ida and whether his instinct, he wasn't up with play enough to chase into the box when on the very, very, very rare occasion when we did manage to get it to the end line and whip it back in, that he wasn't necessarily up at the play and about his instincts, and that he's still a young player who's cutting his cloth and finding his feet at that level. And the other thing is that people keep talking about, obviously, Aaron Connolly, and there is an element without question that Stephen Kenny has been an unlucky general. There is no getting away from it at all. But we're investing a lot in Aaron Connolly coming in and being Robbie Keane, which he's not. He will create more chances. He'll probably help us score more goals, but it isn't going to be, the floodgates are not going to open. And, then we're suddenly also in a position where we're very dependent on this one player being fit and healthy all the time. I'm slightly concerned that we're investing so much around one player who himself only has a handful of caps just yet.
But who's doing that? Like, is that not just the conversation that happens outside of the camp? Like, you've got to accept that Callum Robinson not being in that team as well last night is a factor. And you look at your attackers who are scoring Premier League goals, or at least had the capacity to score Premier League goals. And really, it does stop quite instantly after those two names, Callum Robinson and Aaron Connolly, neither of whom were in that starting lineup last night. So there does start the issues. Adam Ida is not at that level just yet. Hopefully he gets to that level. But the word hopefully is a word that is attached to a lot of Irish footballers at the moment. There is nothing linear about anybody's progression through the football ranks. Just because Troy Parrott was an outstanding underage footballer does not mean he's going to become the next Robbie Keane. The same goes for Adam Ida. The signs have been good for Ida, as we saw from the early stages of 2019. Or from the early stages of this year, I should say. This is a player who we can actually put a lot of faith in to actually make that jump up. And Roy Keane said it as well last night. Now, the thing is, the question around Stephen Kenny is one that's going to come up because his name is trending on Twitter this morning, and that's never a good sign for anybody who's involved in football management. And one of the really frustrating things about the narrative around Stephen Kenny is this whole thing of, imagine if Mick McCarthy put out a team to lose 3-0 at Wembley. Imagine if Martin O'Neill put a team out to lose 3-0 at Wembley. This idea that Stephen Kenny is getting a free pass because he's not one of those two men. And I'm okay with that narrative. I think that that's actually based in truth. Like, no opinion on football exists in a vacuum. Of course, people are going to be more forgiving to Stephen Kenny because of the way the team under Mick McCarthy and Martin O'Neill performed. The whole point of bringing in Stephen Kenny was for change. And when you're changing things as a fairly mediocre team of footballers, you are going to go through some terrible, terrible moments. You're going to go through some very hard nights like last night. And the whole point is that Stephen Kenny is not Martin O'Neill. The whole point is that Stephen Kenny is going to try and change things. And the whole point is that you have to go through last night to hopefully have a night like Scotland had last night at some point in the future.
Yeah, I look at it and it's an excellent contrast. And we talked to David Meyler a little bit about that. And like, look, I really stand over that point about 3-0. Definitely not been a disgrace. Like Roy Keane was given out about Jeff Hendricks, not closing down enough on Jadon Sancho for the second goal. Cyrus Christie might have had a bit of a hand in that. If Seamus Coleman is in there, maybe things are slightly different. And so I wouldn't get overly carried away with being beaten at 3-0 at Wembley. There's no massive shame in that at all. It was just more that element of the heads going down and like potentially the medium term, at least, danger that might do to a psyche that of a team that suddenly it's their culture that when they go one behind, the heads drop and they know they can't score, even if things start to come right a little bit, which was in stark contrast with, like you mentioned, Scotland and the momentum that they've been building over the last couple of years. I saw nothing, only the start of the penalty kicks and then obviously all the aftermath of it last night, but certainly listening to the players that came out afterwards, Christie, who'd scored the goal in the game, and several others that were out afterwards, including the manager, Steve Clark, and talking about Scottish football being back in the map. And like, I think that when we're looking for a comparison this morning, it's not England, it is Scotland.
To a point, like, I mean, it frustrated me watching the Northern Ireland game last night because the own goal from Milan Skriniar came from the rough position where Conor Hourhan missed that worldy of a chance against Slovakia. It's like, oh, so Slovakia can concede a goal from the 6-yard box. It turned out that was frustrating. It's frustrating to think that we were that chance away from beating Slovakia, from progressing to a game against Northern Ireland. And as we saw last night, the difference between Slovakia and Northern Ireland was paper thin. There was a real chance for Stephen Kenny to qualify this team for Euro 2021, and that was the opportunity that was there. There was no chance for Stephen Kenny to beat England. So comparing our level of competency last night to Scotland's level of competency, which I realise I appreciate you're not doing, but comparing those two things will be a pointless exercise for anybody who is getting a little bit jealous of Scotland last night, thinking, why can't we play like them? I'm confident that Ireland will be able to play like them and will have the success like them in a period of time. This is just a really crap part. This is the crap part that every Irish football supporter will have to go through if they want to change. Now, I will say this. If you were an Irish football fan who didn't want change, who thought Mick McCarthy was doing a good job, then by all means, you have every right to complain about what's happening right now, and you have every right to question the manager. But if you are an Irish football fan who want to change, I'm sorry, but you cannot throw your toys out of the pram at this point, because this is the change that Ireland football fans have been looking for. There is a defined style of play that is appreciably different to how it was 12 months ago. And these are the sorts of moments that Ireland fans will have to live with for the time being. Hopefully there will be a greater good to come from this in the medium term. And World Cup 2022, that qualification campaign will be the defining moment for Stephen Kenny, not a friendly against England at Wembley.
We'll talk to Dave Meyler about this a little bit later on as well and get his take on it. You were watching a good bit of Tiger yesterday?
He was class. Everybody telling us in the build-up this week, everybody who do know the inside track, telling us that Tiger Woods is not really going to challenge this week, and it's mostly to do with his body. And when Tiger's body gets brought up, he has in the past defied all logic. He has come back looking fitter than ever, better than ever. And when you hear Paul McGinley in the Sky Sports studio yesterday saying that Tiger Woods is swinging the ball well, he's looking better than I expected him to look, then you know that it's on immediately. You don't even need to look at the scoreboard to know that it's on, because that's almost more important, because he can score as low as anybody else, but it's just that the body will actually allow him to do so, and he is in the hunt. This could be a very, very special weekend. Like I put it to John Duggan earlier in the week that there is a possibility this weekend that Bryson DeChambeau could just blow away the field. And when he came out early tactically looking like a man who wanted to blow away the field, I was like, this is definitely going to happen. I was like, this is going to be the guy who gets a 7 under par. What was it, 4 or 5 holes in, he's 2 over par. I'm like, well, I got that spectacularly wrong. But he manages to turn his entire round around to get to 2 under par going into the clubhouse yesterday, which is almost the most spectacular story from yesterday. Like, forget about Tiger, forget about Paul Casey, who was brilliant yesterday, or Webb Simpson. Bryson DeChambeau's turnaround was phenomenal. And the more information you build up about why you should not really like Bryson DeChambeau, the more it's actually kind of hard to ignore how much part of your mind loves to see him do well, because of the way he thought to himself, I'm going to attack Augusta. Like, screw all the lore about Augusta that, you know, it's easy to go level par, but it's hard to go under par. I'm going to attack all that. You know, loses his ball very early in the day, has like a search team of 500 people looking for the ball in the brush, and like he comes out of it looking much better than ever going home yesterday, and like he's in the hunt as well, and like he just can't stop being one of the most talked about golfers in the world right now. So it's set up beautifully. Like if it's Tiger versus Bryson, for example, on Saturday or Sunday, that would be a really special way to round off the Masters.
Yeah, we take that all day long. I think it certainly was a day for the old lads, like between Casey and Westwood and Woods. Whether that levels off, it probably will over the next few days. You're spot on about DeChambeau, like, because I think he must have been one of the happiest people in the clubhouse yesterday evening, that everything went to pot, and that they had the danger of blowing up on him on day one. It hadn't been out of the tournament almost, and he wrestled back control of it. But yeah, and also you have the likes of McIlroy and others who has a round and a half to play today if they can get it away, and you wonder what sort of impact that will have in a course like that, because it's pretty mentally draining. You know, you got to get the first round completed, then get yourself reset and get out for the second round. I don't know, maybe there's like the Mayo thing. Maybe Rory McIlroy is going to be Mayo in that you know, he's got all the momentum with him. You know, the other lads are all, Bryson DeChambeau is he's Galway, and you know, he's got his round done and he's kicking up his heels. We'll see after this weekend. Yeah, I might be stretching a little bit with that analogy. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing, lads? How are you getting on?
Are you having that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone expected Rory to win this week, did they?
And so by extension, you're saying nobody's expecting Mayo to win this weekend.
Oh, no,
Galway to win this weekend.
Yeah, I think everyone not tipping Mayo to win? Sure.
Yeah,
Have Mayo not won the All Ireland at this stage? No.
Almost everybody, fellas. We'll find out a little bit later in the show. What have you got for the? I presume we're starting with reaction from last night.
Yeah, I think one thing nobody was talking about was Ireland beating England last night. I don't think anyone expected it, and that's pretty much how it played out. England's class coming to the fore, a 3-0 win for Gareth Southgate's side over Stephen Kenny's outfit at Wembley. Goals from Harry Maguire and Jadon Sancho in the first half. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin got England's third goal in the second half from the penalty spot. Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny was obviously asked about the comments made by Matt Doherty. I know you've just played them out. That he said he's embarrassed coming off the pitch at times with the fact that we're not scoring goals, and obviously haven't got a win under Stephen Kenny. But Stephen Kenny pretty much said it's not a concern that he's making comments like that. He understands why players would be disappointed. Now he said he'd have to have a word with Matt Doherty or maybe hear those comments. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But Captain Seamus Coleman was a late withdrawal from the team before the game, so a bit of a surprise when the team news came in and there was no Seamus Coleman. He's also been ruled out of the games against Wales and Bulgaria in the Nations League. We don't know if James McCarthy will be able to play in those games either. He also missed last night's game due to family reasons. Northern Ireland missed out on a place in the Euro 2020. They lost their playoff against Slovakia last night after extra time. 2-1 had finished. 1,000 fans were inside the stadium as Northern Ireland missed out on that place at the Euros. But much better news for Scotland. They're at their first major tournament for the first time in 22 years. David Marshall was the hero. He saved a penalty from Alexander Mitrovic, and it was the Scots who prevailed on penalties away to Serbia and Belgrade. Scotland obviously already know what group they're going to be in. They're going to play England, Croatia and the Czech Republic. I obviously mentioned Ireland play Wales in the Nations League this weekend. They had a friendly last night. They drew 0-0 with the USA in that friendly game in Swansea. Rory McIlroy and James Sugrue among those who'll have to finish their first rounds at the Masters today. McIlroy was level par after 9 holes when bad light suspended play at Augusta last night. Obviously, the first round was delayed for a few hours because of heavy rain. Sugrue will resume on 4 over par. Graham McDowell and Shane Lowry are already in the clubhouse after their first rounds. McDowell is level par, Lowry is 2 over. You mentioned defending champion Tiger Woods there. He's 4 under par, so he's 3 behind the leader Paul Casey. Maybe someone to look out for today, Justin Thomas, one of 3 players and 5 under, but he's only played 10 holes of his first round. He still has most of the back 9 to play, those par 5s, so he could definitely threaten Paul Casey. Ireland begin their inaugural Autumn Nations Cup campaign tonight. Big night for James Lowe. The Kiwi is going to make his first appearance for Ireland, who face Wales at the Aviva Stadium. That game kicks off at 7 o'clock. Obviously, a busy weekend of GAA action coming up as well. Clare know they'll have to do without captain David McInerney for tomorrow's All-Ireland Hurling Round 2 qualifier against Wexford in Portlaoise. McInerney was shown a straight red card in last weekend's win over Laois. His appeal has been unsuccessful.
Yeah, slightly bizarre in that I don't think anybody has actually seen what in fact went on. Phil, good man, thanks a million for that. We'll talk to you a bit later on. Phil Egan there with the latest in the world of live sport coming up on 10 to 8 on this Friday morning. Please do get in contact with us over the course of the day if you have thoughts on the game last night, the golf, the GAA for the weekend, or the rugby tonight, whatever it is. It's jam-packed schedule as always, and we're delighted to have it. Let's face it. It is OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And we have a packed show for you between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to catch up with David Meyler in just a couple of moments' time to get his thoughts on the game last night. Kevin Walsh, the former Galway manager, is going to preview the Connacht football final this weekend and a few more bits beside as well. GAA writer and broadcaster Orla Bannon is with us at 8:15. We look ahead to the Ulster semis, of course, and also see if we can get the latest on what exactly is the situation with Mickey Hart at Tyrone at the minute. Paddy Stapleton, the former Tipperary defender, is going to be with us. An interesting weekend of hurling as well ahead of us. Plenty of action to preview there with Paddy, Alan Quinlan. Obviously on that game that Phil mentioned tonight, the Autumn Series. It's up and running a bit later on. James Lowe makes his debut there. We'll make our quick picks. Will O'Callaghan is very much the man to catch in our quick picks that's been running over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And exactly which way are we all going this weekend, you'll find out at 9 o'clock, and then a little bit look back on what's happening over in Augusta as well. We'll be joined at that point by a very, very, very special guest. So I think you'll want to stay tuned for that's coming your way at 9:15. So that's it. It is OTB AM, and we are going to get stuck into the football last night. David Meyler, I believe, is standing by. Morning to you, David.
Good morning.
We're all looking at, we switched over after the Ireland game last night and we watched a bit of analysis, and we all caught the penalties in the Scotland game and the jubilation that was there, and we're looking at that and thinking our lot is not amazing at the minute here. But regardless of the result last night, and the performance obviously was the thing that was maybe largely disappointing, but hope is not lost when we look at Scotland.
No, definitely not. Look, of course we'd love to qualify for the Euros. There's no doubt in that. I'm quite happy for Scotland in a way. They've not had it for 22 years, and I know, a few lads I've played with them at club level and that, so I'm kind of happy for them. But looking back on our own game, look, it was never going to be easy. It was, Stephen took on the game against England, who are, the fourth ranked side in the world. I know, look, you can talk about Harry Kane, Sterling, Rashford didn't play. Still, every one of those players is playing week in, week out in the Premier League. If you go through this, if you go through the team with, Pope, Maguire, Keane, they're all playing week in, week out. So it was going to be tough, and it was a tough evening. It was a hard game, but look, they've just got to pick themselves up. I don't think Stephen's campaign will be judged off friendlies. It's more about, the upcoming games, and then of course, the World Cup qualifiers next year.
Yeah, the biggest thing that, like, listening to Matt Doherty after the game, I'm sure you heard the comments where he said it was embarrassing coming off the pitch. He talked about the heads going down after a couple of goals went in. It was pretty obvious just looking at the game that was the case. Roy Keane talked about there needing to be more fight. Not even a booking was what he said. England had tougher training games. So if you forget about the dynamics of the game almost to a degree, which would be largely irrelevant when the story is written, it's that lack of fight almost this morning that's the biggest frustration.
Yeah, look, I saw a match. You can tell he's frustrated from the game. You could just see in his post-match interview talking about, like, kind of, it almost felt like they gave up second half, and it was probably one of those where they felt that they couldn't get into a rhythm. The opening 20 minutes of the game, it was very good from Ireland in the sense that they got on the ball, they were knocking it about. But then once kind of Egan went off, I kind of felt the balance was, lost. It's very tough for, a player to come in, with Darragh O'Shea coming on. It is tough. But you can talk about the fight, but, they're a very good team and they knocked the ball around really well. And you could almost say that English team last night that played, about 7 or 8 of them have something to prove because they want to put their names, into the hat. So it was always going to be a tough ask, but at the same time, I did expect more in the sense of, like, never mind yellow cards, whatever, but, like Matt touched on, kind of grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck. There was opportunities to play against England don't come around often, and that it's almost as if that game passed, the majority of players by, in the sense that, it was over before you knew it. And, the goals would be, I think that's the frustrating thing for Stephen. The 2 goals are second phases off set pieces. That's stuff that can be rectified, when the ball goes wide, getting the line up or getting solid, getting back in. They had good setup from corners or whatever. And then, of course, Cyrus giving away the penalty. Stuff like that can be avoided. But look, last night's game is not going to, we won't judge Stephen on that, so I wouldn't read too much into it. No, it's just about his man management, getting the players right for the game on Sunday against Wales.
Yeah, but on the back of it, is there a possibility, David, that, like, the lack of chances that we were creating last night, the fact that the heads go down, the fact that the players know that we can't score goals, the fact that there's a bit of a lack of fight there, is that the sort of thing that, obviously it's over the very early courses of his tenure, but is it the sort of thing that can set into a team's psyche that suddenly they are a little bit weak mentally and a bit unsure of themselves as they look at the minute?
No, I wouldn't be throwing around weak mentally. I think that's wrong. You've got to stop and step back and look at this, from the wide angle and think, we're playing England. They're a good team. we're in a different way of looking at the moment. We're focusing on of course, finishing the Nations League strong for rankings, and then of course starting the World Cup campaign. They're on course. They want to be winning the European Championships next year. That's where their aim is. Do you know what I mean? That's where they're at. We're at a different transition. You look at McGoldrick is obviously just retired. Adam Eade is he's only a young lad. He's 19. There's a lot you can look at in the sense that we are in transition. I actually do feel sorry for Stephen in the sense that Seamus picks up a knock the night before. James McCarthy is out. Then Aaron Connolly's out. Callum Robinson, of course, is unfortunate. I believe he's contracted COVID. I don't think any other Ireland manager has faced so much in such a short period of time in his camps that there's always seems to be a small problem, even after the Finland game the last time. When he spoke, I saw him on off the ball and he spoke well, and the difficulties he faced with Aaron Connolly and Adam being too close to people on the flight and stuff like that. And then of course he comes away and there's another 3-4 players have dropped out. I believe Shane Long was contacted to come up and he has a knock. It's just there's a lot of difficulties. But then you've got to think we're playing England as well. Of course, there's a lot of talk in the build-up about England haven't beaten us in 35 years. But even if you look back and the 1-1 that we played a few years ago when Shane scored, England still dominated the ball. They're going to do that against the majority of countries. Never mind Ireland. Of course, you wanted to see a little bit more in the performance, but last night's game it was a really tough one. It's not as if it was. I don't want to disrespect them, but a kind of a Georgia or an Orman where you're thinking, come on, lads, put the ball in the back of the net or get it down, knock it around for 90 minutes. It was going to always be very difficult. And a lot of those lads was probably their first time playing at Wembley, playing at that big open pitch. It was a tough one. And I think people have been a bit, quick to criticise. Of course, yes, I personally want to see more, but, you've got to look at it from the big picture.
If you're a player who played last night, David, and the player who gets picked again for a Sunday, how do you go out and disprove the things that Matt Doherty is saying? How do you prove that you do want it enough and that you're not going to come off the pitch in an embarrassed state on Sunday?
Yeah, but they're Matt's personal comments. That's how he felt after the game. Sure. Obviously Matt has had great success with Wolves. He's having good success with Tottenham at the moment. So Matt is coming from that winning environment or that winning change room where they're going out and they're winning games, and then he comes away and he's not having the same buzz, which he's desperate for. He'd probably rather win with Ireland more, than Spurs. In the sense of, you've got a game against Wales, two teams that are on level par. Of course, look, when Bale and Ramsey play, they're probably the two exceptional players that stand out. But you should never have to pick yourself up, for an Ireland game. Look, I've harped on enough times about it's the biggest honour of my career, and I've no doubt it's the biggest for all them. The big thing is, look, Stephen is a very good manager and he's tactically aware and whatever. Now he's got to pick his team up to go out and put a performance in Sunday, this is the testament of the manager he is, because you need to get those fellas to forget about the game and go out and put in a performance against Wales on Sunday.
Does Stephen Kenny need to tweak anything? Maybe not with his philosophy, but maybe just in terms of his template tactically. Like you think back to Antonio Conte as Chelsea manager, and they got humbled by Arsenal. I think 3-0 was the scoreline as well, and he completely overhauled his formation. I don't think anybody's asking for that, given the difference in quality on the pitch last night. But what tweaks would you like to see from a management perspective, if any?
It's very difficult to start tweaking, especially in international camps, in the sense that, if you look at it now, it's Friday morning. The players who have played will be recovering. The ones who played, even the ones who come on if they played, depending on how long they've played. Others will have probably a light training session, and even say, tomorrow's your match day -1. You're a day out from the game. The lads who still played the chunk of the game will still probably be recovering. So it's hard to, tactically change something. If you're going along the lines of, do we switch formations, blah blah blah. I think the one tweak I would love to see is a full fit and available Ireland team with no problems. Of course, that's very difficult. You'd listen. I've been listening to Seamus speaking in the build-up, and then you just hear 2 hours before kickoff, he's picked up a knock and he's ruled out. And then, of course, like the other lads I mentioned, it's just he's always had something to face where he's chopping and changing. I hope, John Egan obviously went off. It looked like the collision with Conor Hurling. I think John has built up a good partnership with Duffy, albeit I know Shane's had some critics over some of his club performances, but I wouldn't question him, his character. I think he'll be fine. But you just kind of want to really see a stable 11 in the sense that it's the same team, that Stephen can work closely with them. But you look at then, if you want to take positives, I think Jason Malumbi coming on last night, albeit, the game is kind of dead and buried, but there was a creative spark and there was drive and there was energy in it. So tactically, I wouldn't be tweaking too much. I'd be just dusting them down, looking at it, where, like I said, if you looked at the goals, I know Cyrus would be really disappointed to get caught with that by Saka, skipping by him. But then it's just the second phases off set pieces. So you imagine, Keith Andrews, Damien Duff will be going through this and they'll be probably scratching their heads going, like looking back and going, yeah, we could probably have avoided these goals. But there's enough stuff to work on. And that, like I said again, and I'm going to keep repeating it, we can't be too critical because England are a very good team.
What are we? I hear. I'm not complaining about us playing football. I know very few that are. But are we a bit too determined at times to play the ball out from the back? Like you look at times last night, England had 4 or 5 press up. Very difficult for us to make any headway with that. Like, is there a time in the game to thump it long, to abandon ship and try to play it out from the back?
Yeah, 100%. You almost have to earn the right to play out from the back. When you start doing it, of course, you're going to invite teams onto you. Liverpool have been the best at it for the last 2-3 years. They set traps. England at times will leave our centre halves have the ball, and then it's, as you said, they press in numbers. Then it's, can you play around the press, which is always going to be difficult. But every now and then you do need to play it long, play it up to Adam, who could get hold of it and link the play, just to stretch England's defence, kind of push the back. At times when we did break, that's kind of where the joy went, where, there was one occasion where the ball came out to Adam, he lays it off, and, Darrell Horgan gets in and he puts a good cross into a good area. But then it's just, then you kind of earn the right to play out because England then suddenly start to think like, oh, they're going to go long. Are we set up? There could, look, at times, yes, there's an overemphasis on playing, but you need to, find the right times to play. And when you lose in possession, I think that would be another big thing, that we did turn over possession a bit. Well, we turned it over too much, not a bit too much. We did lose possession. Those things would be frustrating because I think they're avoidable. Of course, if you have a player trying something in the final third or in a key area where we're looking to, put someone in for a goal scoring opportunity or get down the side for a cross, then fine, you don't mind that. It's just turning over possession in our, say, or our defensive third, kind of around the halfway line. We can't afford to be giving the ball away in those key areas. But look, there's enough stuff that was good, and it was also a good test for the lads to say, like, this is where England are at. Yes, it wasn't England's full strength 11, but that's the level where we need to get to for international football so that we're qualifying for major tournaments.
You've been a great voice of reason this morning, David. We're all down on our luck here, but you brought a bit of sensibility.
Well, do you know what? Yeah, but that's the thing. It's the popular thing nowadays is to be negative, and it's the quick to judge players and whatever. Like, it was a tough game. There's no getting away from that. Yeah, the performance could have been better, but like I said, Stephen's not going to be judged. The players, they would have wanted to do better against England. We'd harped on over 35 years they've not beaten us. We've had 6 draws in between. Can we get a result so that, we keep that going? I think gone are the days of the rivalry between Ireland and England, in the sense, if you look at the tackles, or, there was no kind of fire, or, it might have been different if there was a full crowd there, but it was always going to be tough. And you've got to kind of take your hat off to Stephen for taking on the game. I saw Kevin Doyle talking, where could we have done a camp leading into the Wales game, but he chose to take on the England game. I know you have to play a certain amount of games with FIFA rankings and what have you, but fair play to them, and it was a lesson. England probably were only in third gear, but it's something it's a platform that they can build on. If people are going to be talking about, oh well, we're not scoring, blah blah blah, it's very difficult to score against England. You know, even if he has a full strength 11 and everyone available to him, it was still going to be a tough ask. So I wouldn't be looking at that. Look, we could have a totally different conversation come Monday morning or Sunday evening after the Wales game. That's the game that we need to go and put a performance in, create chances and score goals, you know. And then, look, if we get a result against Wales and then lead into the Bulgaria game and get another result, people won't be talking about the England game. That's how, you know, football's fickle like that, because it moves on so quickly. So it's a big game come Sunday, and, you know, the lads have got to dust themselves down. Stephen's got to get them ready, organised, and, you know, go out and put on a performance. Just see the positives of creating chances, and please God, somebody's going to stick the ball in the back of the net.
David, thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm certainly feeling a bit better about life after that. That was a good voice of reason there, David Meyler, on the game last night. We'll have more reflections on that action to come over the course of the morning, and plenty more to come, including the former Galway manager previewing the Connacht football final after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Saturday panel on OTB.
In 1927, Cavan Coolidge was President of the United States, and it was the last time Dublin beat Cork in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. They have met in the championship on 15 occasions, with Cork victorious 12 times, Dublin twice and just a single draw. History, John, would tell us this will be a victory for the Leesiders. However, hurling is usually a game that takes on a life of its own.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Affected as COVID-19 continues to cause restrictions across.
Mom, is he still coming this year?
Of course he is.
Really, Dad?
He's coming.
Did you get the one you liked?
Of course I did.
These are his favourites. Is he definitely coming?
You just gotta believe.
Are you sure?
He's coming.
Grandad!
Happy Christmas, Connor.
I knew you'd come.
Jeez, look, I guess the other point, I mean, you've got the best Tyrone team that they'll ever produce, probably winning 3. You've got this mob from Kerry doing their thing, and they're pretty phenomenal as well. Cork nip in and get 1, but just that 1, and then suddenly you're into the Dublin years. So, like, not like it was easy either, in fairness, Michael, you know?
No, I know it wasn't, but I suppose if I think of all the names that who knocked us out, you know, from 03, 04 on, like, there's Antrim, there's Westmeath, there's Wexford.
Okay, I've got nothing for you on that. I've got nothing for you there.
Yeah, that's just those are the low ones. You know, those are low. There was Kerry here and there, and there was Cork as well, and there was Donegal. But you know, that's just kind of where it was at. And look, I'd love to relive them for years in some ways. And what would I do differently? I don't know. Is the thing. But again, if I could rewind, I think I would and go at it again.
Here on OTB, the big names keep on coming as part of our Cadbury FC series of remote roadshows. So far, we've had in-depth chats with Gary Neville, Teddy Sheringham, Packy Bonner, Shay Given, Sol Campbell, Ian Rice, Glenn Hoddle and Harry Redknapp.
What are you talking about, Levo?
Next up are Jason McAteer and Kenny Dalgleish. That's coming your way from Sunday the 15th of November. Stay tuned to OTB Sports social channels for more details, and go to otbsports.com to check out those previous remote shows as well. It's all with thanks to Cadbury FC. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
OTB AM
with Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Almost 8:10 on this Friday morning. Delighted you are tuned into OTB AM with myself and Owen this morning. And in the break there, you'll have heard from the former Galway star, Michael Meehan. And he was part of our Connacht football final roadshow with Super Value this week, as well as Claire Egan, Finian Hanley, David Brady, Larry Finnerty in there as well. And you keep an eye on the OTB Sports app, which you can download from your provider all this weekend. For much more on that. Now, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by the former Galway manager, Kevin Walsh. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Adrian Owen, how are you doing?
Flying, thanks. Yeah, really looking forward to the football this weekend, including this one. And from a Galway point of view, the injuries keep stacking up. Damien Comer amongst those out now, and a few others doubtful. Galway obviously coming in cold after that Sligo by Mayo playing their 5th weekend in a row is the narrative that we're leading into it here. So all pointing to a Mayo win, I presume.
Well, I suppose I'm a big man to look at the bookies because they seem to take everything into account. So I think it's only something like half a point of a difference. So it's quite even money in the bookies. So they know something. But if you look at form, I suppose if you're to talk this out 3 weeks ago, you'd have Galway favourites. So look at the Connacht final takes a life of its own, particularly Mayo and Galway. And like I said, I suppose the talk is Galway are kind of cold, and I suppose they would have felt they might have needed that match against Sligo to get back on the road a bit, maybe, just to a bit of confidence. But then you look at the other side, and you said, Mayo are playing 5 weeks in a row, which can take a toll. So look, either way, it should be a very, very close game. It normally is with Mayo, so here's hoping.
What happened to Galway in that league game, Kevin, and is it going to have a factor this weekend?
Yeah, look, it's going to. I suppose there's two things here. It can give the confidence a bit of a dent, but sometimes it can work the other way. It can kind of give you a kick in the backside at times and get you ready for something. So, even if I think if you look at the Roscommon Mayo match last week, it's probably one of the first years that Roscommon and the supporters of Roscommon and a lot of people around would have felt that Roscommon had a really, really good chance of the game last week. And I think a little of that probably fed into the Roscommon players, to be honest. And, it's a known fact like that when Roscommon, I suppose when they feel that their underdogs are not given a chance, they really, really grind things out and they never give up. Where I thought last week that they looked really, really flat from the very start and that fighting edge wasn't there. So it's just hard to know how good this Mayo team are. They have a few new lads in as well. But I don't think they got a proper test last week.
Yeah, and it is difficult to know where Galway are at. Like Owen says, are they the team that were hockeyed by Mayo, or the team that gave Dublin like a bit of a run? And even in that game, there was, some of the factors that they're dealing with this weekend, as in Noah Comer and Shane Walsh and Gary Sice come in at half time. Like it's impossible to read the form lines of Galway is what I'm finding
very hard
in the run into.
Yeah. No, very, very, very hard. And I think I think Shane is back. So he's only really missed a half of football during the year, so he should be okay. Damien, unfortunately, again for Damien, he's having a really bad run, and we missed him all last year. We missed the whole league in 2018 when we got promoted. He just came on as a sub in Croke Park against Kildare, so he's missed an awful lot over the last 3 years, and we only got him in for a half last year. So I suppose Damien is just been really, really unfortunate for him, but he's a big player and he's a big loss. So it's hard. Pádraig has put his own players in here at the minute. He's tried a lot of younger players. I suppose unfortunately the league didn't finish out for him to try other players and see where they're at. So, Paul Kelly, Jason, young lads put in, we'll say, with one game experience. It's probably hard to see. I don't know what the team's going to be, but it's pretty hard to put them in first time because we don't know what you're going to get. So, but look at when we finished last year, I think the average age of the panel is 24.5. So it's in a good place, and Galway being good at the start of the league, but it's very hard to know at this time. And again, you're going to look at weather conditions. It's going to be weather conditions. The weather going to be probably poor. So, having said that, look, I expect Galway to rise their game, and I just don't know exactly how good Mayo are really.
What should Galway do? Where should they position Shane Walsh to get the best out of him this weekend, Kevin?
I better not reply to that because I get sick anyway. But look, you try to keep Shane up the field as high as possible. Probably in the full forward line and coming out to the half forward line is probably the ideal situation for Shane. And again, even with that, he will get pulled back because if he's working hard enough, he's going to have to at times follow a player. You just can't stand up, and he's aware of that. And again, if you go back to the Monaghan game this year in the league, Shane was actually working hard again like he had been. I think he was the guy that fouled McManus, or one of the Monaghan guys, for the penalty. I think we forget to look at that now. So it's important that we look at everything. And Shane will be, you try to keep him as close to goal as you can, but you don't want his back to goal either, where you're going to have a dog at corner back that's on him all the time. He needs to come out a little bit to get space so he can get those runs that we're so used to, And in fairness, when he was doing that for us, he should undoubtedly have got an All-Star in 2018.
100%. He was brilliant that year. Is there a case, though, if you play him too deep that Mayo just put Paddy Durcan on him, and Durcan does to him what he did to Enda Smith last week or to Jack McCaffrey last year in the All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, if I had my choice with him and you have players available to you, I'd have him in the full forward line, absolutely. Right. Again, you're going to have the likes of an Oisin Mullen now, or it could be a Keegan, because he's in the full back line, who could pick up Shane in the full back line. So Mayo have options here to go after, the strongest players, because even with that, Keegan and Mullen will come from deep. So do you let them go or do you not let them go? And if you're not set up properly, there's going to be massive holes in the defence. And, that's something that we got great joy out of when we covered up the middle three channels of the pitch and kept the two outside channels 1 and 5 open. So we were taking Mayo down the sidelines, and they didn't like that. And, even the good games they had against Dublin, Dublin would have been quite open in the middle, where it allowed their runners come like Turk and Boyle, and it was lovely to watch, but they were given space to do it. And the best way to take on Mayo is to take them down channel 1 and 5, and it does frustrate them, and it suffocates them, and hit them in the counter, because they're really, really good footballers, and they seem to form one or two more.
So basically, stop the middle, block up the middle, because that was, to go back to that league game, and I know it might not be worth anything this weekend, but it did seem, Kevin, that they gave up a lot of Mayo scores in the scoring zone. Like, the D where the Dubs will take their points from, that was just wide open all afternoon long against Mayo. So they just need to plug those gaps right through the middle, and they've got a serious chance this weekend in stopping Mayo's attack.
Yeah, and again, that's easier said than done. I mean, that takes a lot of work to do that. And it's nice that you mentioned that match. If you look at the amount of times that Sean Andy Kelly was left isolated 1v1 with crossfield balls, which is impossible to defend anyway for a defender. These straight balls in, if you have pace, you'll defend them and get a fist on it, but the crossfield balls are really difficult. And then if you have no pressure on the kicker, that's doubly bad, because they can place the crossfield ball. And that was something that Galway won't be happy with in the last game, but they should learn from it. But if you have no pressure on the ball and you haven't your back covered up and you have a 1v1 with crossfield balls, show me any team in Ireland that will defend that. So there is a lot of stuff that needs to be tightened up on for that. But look, that was a game. I presume there was a lot of experimental going on in that game. So hopefully there'll be something learned from it.
When you were Galway manager, where did you want to see Aidan O'Shea play when you were coming up against Mayo?
To be honest, it didn't bother us. Right. I suppose the first year we went in, was the thing was at the time, before we knew our players and before we developed the systems and stuff, I didn't like to see him really on the edge of the square, because, big, strong man, good hands, fairly good at getting frees, even though sometimes there mightn't be frees, but he'll get them. And but again, as time went on, I used to love to see him on the edge of the square, because you double team him, and he gets frustrated if he can't twist and turn and hasn't got space, and his power then is gone. And as I used to call it, even a weak defender, as in physically wise, if you're like a Velcro man where your hands are going in and out, and knowing that the likes of Aidan or any other big player has to either bounce or solo after 4 steps, you're going to frustrate somebody if you've got a 2v1. So, the latter end, I would love if Aidan was inside and all the ball was going in, because you'd have the plan developed for that, and it sucked the life out of Mayo if the likes of a big player like that wasn't doing the business. So, to answer your question, at the start, didn't like seeing full forward, but at the end, would have no qualms of going full forward.
In an overall sense, Kevin, it seems like over the last few weeks that a lot of people are starting to re-back Mayo to get the job done in an overall sense, in terms of like putting it up to Dublin. And maybe some of that is to do with some of the other contenders kind of falling off. But do you see where people are coming from on that? Like when you look at, like, they've beaten Leitrim and they beat a pretty poor Roscommon team last weekend. What's your sense of Mayo's capacity to win in All-Ireland?
One of the contenders are gone. We know that, okay. But again, I think it would be unjust just to say that Kerry are gone and shouldn't be gone. That Cork side have been improving for quite a while, so they're now coming into one of the contenders regardless. Mightn't have the experience, it was always going to be down to 4 or 5, 6 teams anyway. So, like I said, Leitrim, Roscommon, and even the Galway match was so open, you really can't, in any shape or form, say we know now that Mayo are ready, because we don't know. Oisin Mullins is corner back. He likes to come forward. Little bit of frailties in man marking. Full back line has changed. We've We have a new, McLaughlin wing back who looked like another good footballer, to be fair to him. But Lee Keegan's gone back corner back as well. So I'm not so sure unless he gets a man-marking job or someone up the field, whether he is a cornerback or not. So there's loads of questions to be asked. Are that midfield good enough? Matthew Ann's kind of its second year as such, had a good first year. We just don't know when he comes up against the bigger stuff. Had they got it in the centre area? So, Sunday will tell a lot. Now, if Galway turn up like it did in June, we still mightn't know. I'd like to see Galway turning up with a real fight in their bellies, with an organisation and a plan to stop their bigger players like Aidan O'Shea. If you look at the analysis after the Galway game, it was as if Aidan O'Shea had never been played full forward before. We're talking about this great plan of Aidan O'Shea full forward, and he'll be there for the year coming forward. Then the following week, you look at Tyrone, where they had a bit of a plan and they had a sweeper. Aidan O'Shea's game wasn't near as effective, and we're back to the old talk again. So you just can't get excited over one or two games because, we talked about Kerry last week. Cork, for the first time, probably set up a lot different than they had in the past. A little bit more of a plan, a bit more ruthless, blocking off channels for Kerry, and all of a sudden it was as if Kerry changed their game plan and wasn't kicking the ball in. Probably couldn't kick it in a lot because of weather conditions, pressure on the ball, and also Cork had the back covered up a lot better than I'd seen in the past. So, to be saying Kerry just went to a different game, they were forced to go a different game to a degree. And, having said that, we look at Kerry and Monaghan, both teams out of the All-Ireland series now. But you've got to look a lot deeper, and we'll say if Clifford had been as clinical as he had been in the past, he'd have 2 14-yard frees. Kerry would probably be still in this. If McManus had kicked his last 3 wides, Monaghan would probably still be in this. So it's not as simple as, saying Peter King would change his tactics or blah, blah, blah. There's loads of other stuff in there.
Can that Galway team win in All-Ireland?
To be honest, it's new, and where it was taken over, and Paul could have said it himself, and he still reiterated it. I hear John Cannon saying last week in his interview, All-Ireland is what they're looking for. It's not just Connacht. So it's great to see that they're that ambitious. And I suppose, to be fair, Galway for the last 2 or 3 years have been, with a little bit of injury-free, have been the top 3 or 4 teams anyway. So they should be thereabouts. I suppose there's newer players in the weekend, and there's now a confidence thing in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Can they lift that? And if they do, and get a few players back, and get a good defensive system that can attack quickly out of it, there's no reason why not.
I understand that you have an autobiography coming out, Kevin, and it's, from what I understand, part autobiography, part coaching clinic, and I wondered what your take on you mentioned Kerry a couple of times there. A lot of conversation, obviously, about the final play of the game and maybe Tommy Walsh's role in that. What was your coming from that sort of coaching side of it? What was your take on that?
Yeah, to be honest, it's something I'd be always looking awful close at because, you're right, and we'll be bringing out a book in the next week or two, and there's a lot about coaching in there, and there's what people forget in a championship match now, when it's really up to 80 minutes by the time you had the injury time and stuff like that. So you really need to prepare for 80 minutes, and if it's 78, it's 78. So in that 80 minutes, one player, the most you're on the ball is 1 minute. So I think there's a lot left behind in the coaching side of it. How can someone impact a game for the other 79 minutes when you're off the ball? And sometimes it's really hard. I think that most time your opponent is dangerous when he doesn't have the ball, because we tune out and we don't understand the amount of impact you can have if you stay tuned in. So, for instance, you're right. You mentioned about the Tommy Walsh thing. That was something that really caught me. And again, I'm not blaming Tommy Walsh here, but has Tommy Walsh ever been coached how to block out? There's a thing there we'll talk about in the book is, it's how to find, feel and fetch. You really have to find your opponent as to where he is and what threat he is when the ball is in the air. You've then got to make a physical contact so you feel where he is. At that point, then you can decide, well, do I go for the fetch or don't I? And in Tommy Walsh's case the last day, all he had to do was understand how to find and feel, and forget about the fetch, because he didn't need it. That game was there to be won. But look, I don't blame Tommy Walsh in that, but it is something, yes, in the book I'll be talking about all these skills off the ball, but we take them for granted. They're not analysed. It's really the invisible game, and the stuff that people don't see has a huge impact on games, and that's one of them.
Yeah, it's called The Invisible Game, and we're going to have a read of it and get you back on, Kevin, at some point, hopefully over the next few weeks. Really enjoyed that. Thanks a million.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Kim Walsh on the line there ahead of the Connacht football final this weekend. Ulster football moves into the business end as well. Delighted to say that the GAA writer and broadcaster Orla Bannon is on the line now. Morning, Orla.
Morning. Plenty
to get to here, and we're going to start with Breffni Park, Kingspan Breffni Park to begin with tomorrow at 1:15, Armagh, Donegal. And on the face of it, no more than the game we've just been talking about, there's a lot of people expecting Donegal to get through this. But then when you look at what happened over the last couple of weeks with the Tyrone game, and very reliant on Michael Langa maybe in that game, lots of quality elsewhere around that Donegal forward line as well, and a lot of leaks for Geezer to plug.
Yeah, it's a very interesting game, because I suppose we know pretty much what we'll get from Donegal, but a lot of the question marks are about Armagh. They waited for so long to try and get up to Division 1. They said they wanted to get up with the big boys. Their words. They're there now. This is an opportunity for them to see, have they closed the gap? Can they compete with one of the top teams? And when it comes to Ulster, it doesn't get any tougher than playing Donegal. So this is a massive test for Armagh. It's a great opportunity for us to see exactly where they are. It's pretty interesting. They've been in development for quite a few years. They have the physique to go with Donegal. They have a fabulous forward line. We all know what their forwards can do. So I think it's set up for a really good game. It's definitely, I think, going to be one of the best games this weekend, that's for sure.
Can they compete?
I think they can. When you look, I suppose a lot of question marks still will be about their defence. Can they have to try and keep the foul count to the minimum? That's still something that is a concern for them. You saw even the last day against Derry, the number of frees they gave away, and Shane McGuigan just, nearly, that was a very tight game. Derry had their chances, there's no doubt about it. Shane McGuigan, Niall Loughlin punished them from frees, and of course we know Donegal have excellent free takers, so that isn't going to be a problem. So I think we know what Armagh can do when they get the ball and when they're on the front foot, but they have to be very, very careful. They have to be very disciplined, and if they're not, Donegal will punish them.
Yeah, it's suddenly Ulster football is very much a discussion point for the positive order. There's a lot of interesting things happening, including on the other side of the draw as well. And even on the Geezer side, like there's a sense that maybe there's a bit of freshness about this Armagh side. Is he into his sixth? Is it his sixth term now? Am I right about that? And where are they at in that trajectory?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it's taken a bit longer than Kieran or anyone in Armagh would have liked, but there certainly was no hint of impatience. The players have bought into everything. They continue to buy into everything that he tells them, and it took them, last year their Ulster Championship win over Down was year 5. That was their first time to win an Ulster Championship match. So a lot of counties would have been a little bit impatient before that, but they ran Cavan in so close they could easily have got to the Ulster final. They are on the difficult side of the draw. Going to Derry, they were hot favourites going up to Celtic Park. I did think Derry had a very good chance, and so it proved. It was a very tight game, but Armagh will take a lot of confidence from that they came through that. Rory Grugan was excellent as well, and you had Jamie Clark, no club football this year. He was, just limited time on the ball, but every time he was on the ball it was just quality. He scored a couple of points that only Jamie Clark could score, and he always has that in his locker. So Donegal will be mindful of that forward line. Of course, you've Rian O'Neill as well, can bomb them over, and Oisin O'Neill from long range. So Armagh certainly have a lot of weapons that Donegal will have to be very careful about.
How much do you feel that the Tyrone match will bring this Donegal team on, Orla? Because it seems that in recent years, whenever Donegal have got into a war, when it's really mattered, they sometimes come up short. I'm thinking of Castlebar last year, for example. It's hard to distill something down to one game, but it comes to mind that they couldn't get out of their Super 8s group when it really mattered last year. It really mattered against Tyrone a couple of weeks ago, and they got the job done. Did it feel significant in the journey of this team getting a knockout win like that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think the pain of, you alluded to, failing to get out of those Super 8s groups the last 2 years. They've been Ulster champions and they haven't got to an All-Ireland semi-final, and that has really hurt them. So even though, yes, the three in a row is a big goal to chase this year, but I think also it's the fact they want to go on to an All-Ireland semi-final and get to the latter stages. So I think as well, the last day you had some of the younger guys were the guys that stood up and got them over the line in very difficult conditions. Michael Langan, Kieran Thompson, guys like that. So you're going to have the old reliables like Michael Murphy and Ryan McHugh. They'll feel they have a lot more in the tank, a lot more to offer on a better pitch, on a better day. And I think that Donegal will feel that they are very much, now they've got through that Tyrone game. Everyone thought that was like the de facto Ulster final. They've come through it with flying colours, and really it's all laid out for them now. It's there for them.
In your opinion, where does this Donegal team compare to the 2014 Donegal team? And you hate to make everything about Dublin all the time, but they are always going to be the hunted in this display. Do you think that they have a similar chance to catch the Dubs this year if they do get out of Ulster?
Well, everyone's wondering who's going to catch the Dubs. Is it possible? It's been such a strange year. I mean, I suppose, and everybody's had such unusual preparation this year. We can't really judge teams, and I don't think we can really criticise teams that win or lose this year because it's been such an unusual year. Donegal have a really strong squad. The depth of their squad is probably like Dublin in terms of an Ulster team. They certainly have the depth of their squad is very impressive. Whether they can be the team, I'm not sure, but we would know a lot more, I think, with another game. I mean, I think we'll know a lot more about Donegal as well to see how they handle this test against Armagh. Because you would expect them then to win the Ulster final.
Yeah, and on that point then, Orla, like the de facto Ulster final been that quarter final, like you mentioned, I'm sure that it's something that'll be spoken about in the Armagh dressing room this week. I'm sure it's something that Cavan are talking about now as well after their own their own success over the last few weeks, and that Monaghan game being maybe the benchmark of it. Are you expecting them to come through on the other side?
You'd have to feel sorry for Cavan. No team really has been through as much as they have in the last few weeks. This is going to be their 5th week in a row. Pretty much everyone got a week somewhere along the way. They haven't had a week because they were in their preliminary round in Ulster, so they had that very stressful relegation from Division 2. I mean, it looked like they were fine. I was at that game against Roscommon and it was all fine, 67, 68 minutes, and then word came through about the 2 late Laois goals against Fermanagh that sunk them. So back-to-back relegations. They only had 7 days to get ready then for Monaghan, and you didn't really give them a prayer, to be honest, because they seemed to be taking a step back from last year, getting to the Ulster final. But they hung in there. Monaghan will be still licking their wounds about that one, to be 7 points up at half-time. But, Cavan really hung in there and showed a lot of guts. Last week against Antrim, they looked a little bit leggy, a little bit tired. It was a very, very poor game, to be kind about it. So I think they'll prefer to dwell on their performance against Monaghan as opposed to their performance last week. But Down will be a very different challenge. Down certainly looked to be a team on the front foot as well. That was quite an impressive performance by them against Fermanagh. To go down to Fermanagh and win is not easy. And, they look pretty good. So I have a feeling Down might actually come through and get to the Ulster final.
Orla, we should talk about what's happening in Tyrone at the moment. Mickey Harte was looking for a 1-year deal. It's not going to be forthcoming from the Tyrone County Board. Instead, they want somebody to take a 3-year deal. What is the latest on this?
Well, I suppose a lot of people probably thought that Mickey would get a 1-year extension, just given the year that's been in it. It's been such a disjointed year. As I said earlier, I don't think we can judge any teams really on what happens this winter because it's been such a strange year. So I think because he'd been there so long, 18 years, he'd wanted a 1-year extension. I think a lot of people, even within Tyrone as well, probably thought he would be granted that 1-year extension. That doesn't seem to have been a case, and we can only regard that as a pretty significant development that was turned down on Tuesday night. So what do we read from that? Where are things at the moment? Well, Mickey hasn't given any indication of his intentions. So what can we read into that? Possibly that then he is willing to continue to fight to stay in charge. And if Tyrone wanted all their managers now to be in 3-year terms, then possibly that's something he's going to think about very seriously and whether he's willing to go through that process.
And if he doesn't, who would be the front runner to step up to the plate?
Well, look, that's an interesting one because I suppose for so long there's been a line of potential managers or coaches who haven't out of deference, I suppose, and respect to Mickey and everything that he's achieved. Because let's not forget, people talk about the All-Ireland's been way back, but even in the last 3 years, Tyrone have been to an All-Ireland semi-final, an All-Ireland final, and an All-Ireland semi-final. So it's not like they have been, way off the pace. So people have not been willing to go up against him, but I think there may be an appetite for this year that there would actually be a few challengers. You could look around, like Fergal Logan obviously will be a name that people will be thinking about, just given because that he led a lot of that team to All Ireland under-21 success in 2015. But there'll be lots of other people, I think, as well. I think there'll be a few people interested in this job. There's no doubt. If it becomes.
Yeah, there's no way he wants to step down, is there? No chance.
Well, I think that if he was going to do that, we would have heard about that already. I mean, that development was Tuesday night. This is now Friday. I mean, he certainly deserves all the time to be given that opportunity to make that decision. But I would have thought if that was the road he was going to go down, we would have heard about it already. Yeah.
All right, Orla, we'll watch events, and we'll watch events on the pitch over the weekend as well. Thanks a million for joining us.
No problem, Adrian. See you all.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Orla Bannon on the line there, GAA writer and broadcaster, looking ahead to all events in Ulster this weekend. We've hurling chat with Paddy Stapleton coming up very shortly, but I do want to remind you that the 2020 Football All-Ireland Senior Championship obviously well underway now, and to celebrate Super Value as part of their Support Where You're From campaign have given us some great prizes to give away. You can dig out your favourite ticket stub, match programme, jersey, photo with your hero, any GAA-related items really that you've been dying to tell the nation about. We want to hear from you. Make a 20-second video explaining its significance to you and get them into us on any of our OTB social channels or indeed on WhatsApp 087 9180 180. And we're going to choose a winner every Friday during the championship, and each weekly winner will land a €200 Super Value voucher and also the chance to star on the Super Values Super Fans series, which is a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters right around the country. Super Value are proud sponsors of the GAA All-Ireland Senior Championship. You can see facebook.com/Super Value Ireland for much more details on all of that. And, of course, keep an eye out on the OTB social channels later this week. We're going to have the next in our roadshow series with Super Value as we look ahead to the Connacht football final. Some massive name guests there. Part one is the Mayo special that aired last night and is available across the OTB Sports app right now. David Brady is up there and Larry Finnerty as well. Part two, it will be live tonight on Off the Ball. Michael Meehan and Finian Hanley offering you the Galway perspective on all of that. And then part three is going to be our match preview with Claire Egan, David Brady and Michael Meehan, and that's going to air on Saturday's show. So the full roadshow will be available Sunday morning on the OTB Sports Radio, on OTB Sports Radio from 10 a.m. as well. You can get it there in full just to fill your boots properly for the weekend. You can get it on the radio section there of the OTB Sports app or on otbsports.com/radio. So that is exactly where all of that is at. We've lots more to come. We're going to talk to Paddy Stapleton in just a couple of moments' time, and we're going to discuss with him, obviously, some fascinating hurling for the weekend right across the provinces, and plenty more as well. Besides, we're going to be joining a very special guest. We'll be live to Augusta to join a very special guest at about 9:15 this morning. So stay tuned for that. Alan Quinlan is with us as well in just a little bit, where he will preview tonight's game as the autumn series gets up and running. So that is, that's all coming. And Paddy Stapleton is on the line, I believe. Morning to you, Paddy.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. So much to get into here, so I'm going to start in no particular order at all. But Leinster will kick off there. It's tomorrow night, 6:15. It's Galway, Kilkenny, and Galway with the stiffer test, maybe, and handed out a pummeling, obviously, to Wexford. It wasn't necessarily like Galway were that far off it last year, but are you seeing that as a sign? Do you think that Galway are a live option this year?
Well, I definitely do, and it's been so long since we played hurling back in the spring that you kind of can only go on what's happening now. They've had new management, so it was very obvious to see there was a change in tactics. There was a lot more emphasis on tactics, matchups, and they really knew what they were about. There was no sort of, well, let's see what happens. They were moving the ball where they wanted to move it. They put players into positions where they had problems. Cannon up front, Whelan. They just seem to be very strong in each line. I think they're a serious option going forward. And Bar Limerick now at the minute, obviously you don't want to disrespect my own county, Tipperary, they're all Ireland champions. But at the moment, on form, a year later, like it's not like the All-Ireland was a few months ago, a year later, Galway looked like really the team that can topple Limerick.
Is that as much to do with physicality as much as anything else, Paddy?
Yeah, I think like it all plays into it. There's no point in having physicality if you don't have hurling. I've often played against muck savages of players, but they can't hurl, like, so there's no point in that. But they have it both ways, pretty obviously, and they probably have had that for a few years. But I think since they won the All-Ireland, I don't know if they look as organised or certainly as motivated, but you could really see the other day they were on it. They were switched on for every break and play, and I'd say that's because there was a new element of tactic brought into it, and they probably had some new targets with a new manager, Shane O'Neill. I've heard great things about him from a few different people, but he's certainly a very switched on manager, so I think it's reflected in his players. But physicality, yeah, I think it's something you'll struggle against the likes of a Limerick without it, and it's Limerick we're looking at now because they are the real form team.
Is there a way around it at all then? Like, is there, like, obviously you have to bring that level no matter who you're up against, but is there a tactical shift? Is there a way of thinking around a team like Limerick at this point, or is their brute force actually too much to contend with unless you can match them in the physical department?
I think you have to have a certain amount of physicality. Like you'd say, Kilkenny played them last year, and to be fair to Kilkenny last year, they brought an all-merciful amount of ferocity. And I know we throw around intensity, but that was barbaric stuff, I thought, the All-Ireland semi last year. And they still only barely beat Limerick. So I think you will need that. I think we'll see a switch, though, in tactic. I think every team for the last 5-6 years, definitely when I was playing, it was there that they want to hold their backs, they want to hold the 3 full back line, 3.5 back line, sit your midfielder. I just think Limerick are so good, they sit their full forward line so deep that they create an unbelievable amount of space anyway. So I think that tactic is nearly null and void. So if I was playing cornerback against the Limerick now, I'd tell all my players, shove right up against them. And people say, that's crazy, they're going to get goal chances or space, but they're getting it anyway. So it doesn't matter. So I prefer to see what Kilkenny did last year. They shoved up very hard. That meant the Limerick forwards had to come back the field, and they actually had cover back there anyway. So I think the forwards, maybe they'll have to pick a few backs to go into the forwards at this stage against them.
That's a fascinating point. And like on it, so when you look at the likes of Aaron Gillam, for example, who's really stood out the shadow of some of his teammates over the last year, and he's a brilliant hurler, but is it a case then that the system really suits him, and if you take him out of it, either you mark him out of it or tactically you take him out of it, somebody else steps in? Or is it a case that actually if Waterford on Sunday can get the shackles on him, that actually they get the shackles on Limerick?
I just don't think it's that simple, I think Aaron Glenn is unbelievable and he suits that. But what's to say if he wasn't gone, that John Kiley and Paul Connacht wouldn't have another little trinket in there that suits better? Like Flanagan was playing when they won the All-Ireland. I still can't understand how he's not playing. I think he's fantastic, and I think the day that they do come in trouble, they'll miss Seamus Flanagan playing full forward, because he is so physical, and it's very hard. I'm obviously playing the full back line, and the worst thing I hated was a forward who actually wanted to fight you. Most of them want to kind of run away from it. Not that they were imposed by me, obviously, but they want to kind of run away and get into space, and you can't beat a forward that actually, Bonner Maher type, Conor Whelan type, that say, no, I'm physically well able for you and I'm going to shove you around the place. So that's quite intimidating for a cornerback. But I think their system works. And Gillan, the problem with Gillan, it'd be horrible to mark, is he's a great movement, which is one. They look up to find him, which is the other part of the jigsaw. But if you try and play him from the front, he's unbelievable to ghost him behind, as you've seen. Play your hurley or play your helmet and catch him behind. And if that happens, it's probably a goal. And then if you sit back to stop that, he's just going to run out into the space, get the ball, because his control is so good, and flick it over the bar. So if I was playing against him, I'd prefer he wasn't playing, but I still think that they'd find a way to do damage.
When you look at that, and obviously hopping around, but that with the Munster final in mind, like when Limerick had their necks in the block last year, they dismantled Waterford and Welsh Park, much tighter in the league, and it's maybe you put more emphasis on last year's game, and is that the way you expect it to go?
I wouldn't put more emphasis on last year by any stretch, to be honest with you. I think, similar to Galway, there's a new management in there, and that can really bring a big hop. Even if I think back to my days when Liam Sheedy came in 08, it was like an instantaneous changeover. after a kind of a lull. So I think that's really important. I would obviously know Liam Cal, his form. I wouldn't know him personally, but I'd know his form from the Tip minors and 21s. And that Waterford team has started out the way he finished with those underage teams. And, you know, a lot of people are asking, could he do that? Could he get the same hop out of adults? You know, because they're different to kids. But he is, and they have a savage intensity, but they have a real hunger for work. So I would put a lot more credence in the way Waterford are playing now. I still think, you know, it's very early in their development with Liam to be winning the Munster final, but I actually wouldn't put it past him. Liam Cal has won All Ireland's with under-21 team a few years ago against Cork that probably shouldn't have happened, and it was an unbelievable win against the Head. So I wouldn't put it past him. You'd still think Limerick have that experience against Kilkenny last year when they were kind of caught cold early on. You know, big lead, Kilkenny rushed out to, and it's hard to see that happening again.
It seems that he's broken down the elements of management into quite simplistic terms, like get the best out of your best players. And the form of Austin Gleeson and Ty DeBurka is surely very encouraging from a Waterford perspective. Yeah, 100%. Both having good games the last day. I think Austin Gleeson, you know, he gave him a position. You just say, you're playing wing forward or wherever you're there. So I think under Derek McGrath, it was more of a, well, Austin is a flair player, let's get him moving around so he can get free. And I often think that's the easiest one to mark, because you send out, you know, a good tight man marker on him, and that's a lot of their tactic that's diminished. I think, you know, get him into a position and let him cause damage there and keep the shape of the team. And I think the Burka centre back, I think it was brilliant last day, because he's played as a sweeper for about 5-6 years under Derek McGrath, and a lot of people question whether he could actually play as an orthodox centre back. But the work rate of the team further up the field allowed him to actually sit into a more natural position. So he showed his real array of skills the other day, and he's a tough man as well. So I think it shows they have the leadership right through the team. Whether the youngsters around can go with it is another thing. Yeah, a couple of interesting games obviously in the qualifiers as well. Tip against Cork, LIT tomorrow at 4:00, and the sweeper that Cork were playing in the Dublin game. It's hard to know how much to read into that with Mark Coleman, but when you look at some of those Tip forwards and the capacity that they have, are you assuming that Cork go the same again with the same player, or what are you thinking? If you were to take tradition out of it and take maybe ego out of it and what counties want to do, and some don't want to play with a sweeper, like they're looking at just tactics. Like I probably would play with a sweeper for Cork, and they kind of stumbled upon it the last day. And Cork's backline has often been maligned, you know, much maligned. And I think it does add a bit of security there. And also, I'm not sure Cork need 6 forwards in a way, because they're very, very good when they get good ball. And I think if you 7 backs setting up the play, you're a lot more likely to get good ball up there. And I think it is likely, or maybe they'll start as an orthodox 6, and if Tip forwards are getting too much room, maybe they'll switch. But with it being a heavy ball, you know, Tip's forwards weren't very impressive the last day, and certainly they didn't turn over the Limerick backs too often. So maybe Cork feel like they won't need it. Yeah. The other one is that there's no real interesting talking points, obviously, about the Clare Wexford game, and nobody's mentioned the war during the week. On the pitch, what are you thinking? What's going to happen? You know, it's a little up and down. Obviously, as we know, we're going into it. It's kind of you're blind going into it, because Wexford were just so un-Wexford under Davy last day. I was shocked. I really thought to give Galway a really good game, because like Wexford know that they had a real shot of winning in All Ireland last year, because I think if they got to the final, they're well used to putting Kilkenny away in the last few years, and tactics doesn't suit Kilkenny that Wexford play. But I was shocked. So this is going to just drain away, and Davies' tenure is going to drain away with Wexford, or I think we could see a real humdinger from him the next day. And I would be fancying Wexford, especially McInerney is missing for Clare. I think he's one of their pivotal players, one of the remaining All-Stars from 2013. So without him, you're missing a bit of leadership among the other, as well as the other players. So I back Wexford, and I think Davy is a very good motivator, and I think being caught once is enough. And I'd say the Wexford chaps won't want to hear it again if they don't perform in the first half the next day. Yeah, I see your brother giving out stink about it online as well. We'll see what sort of an impact it has in that game. Well, he's giving out stink about everything, I suppose, is maybe the key with that. Right. Listen, not only are you like have been an unbelievable intercounty hurler and like turning into a great analyst, but you're putting us all to shame now by actually getting into the literary world as well. Tell us about the new book.
Yeah, actually, should I actually get a copy? That was probably silly of me. So maybe I should get a bit better at the PR, okay?
That's it. We have an image of it up on screen anyway.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, so it's called Up in the Air, and basically it is for kids. It's a kind of a fictional Irish story for kids based around a hurling team, fictional hurling team called Glenstown. Now the main character and kind of best player is Fitzy. Not to Davy Fitz now, but his big dream, like he's obsessed. Like he wants to win the county final, and they lost it last year, so he's doubly obsessed this year. But sometimes that's actually it becomes too much, and I think it's all about his struggles of trying to be good enough and wanting to be the captain and wanting to be the lad that lifts the trophy. But the problem is there's a star player like a Joe Canning that's threatening to transfer to one of the clubs nearby, and they know all about him. But he doesn't know who he's transferring to, and this is playing havoc with his mind. And so the worries about Ernie and the worries about wanting to be captain and wanting to be the best player, and that goes through the ups and downs of their season and can they win that championship? So I'm delighted with it. I'm really happy how it came out. It took a lot of hard work, I suppose, as any journalist will know. Writing isn't always easy. I wouldn't say I'm the most natural writer, but really enjoyed it and there's been big impact online already with it, so I'm absolutely with it.
Something you were thinking about for a while, Paddy? What was it? An itch you wanted to scratch for a while?
I'd say it was, yeah. I think one of the lads I'd be friendly with, I said it to him about 3 years ago, and it was kind of like, like anyone, like Fitzy in the book, it's like, have I the confidence to go and do it? To be honest, I'm an English teacher, but that doesn't mean I go and I write creative pieces all the time. I've done a bit of writing, with Shane, my brother, and I've done it for local newspaper about hurling and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean you can write creatively. So yeah, I just made the decision. I finally pushed myself into it, but I had to pull together a new system of actually writing, because I never creatively wrote much before, but I kind of just went back to the basics of what do I teach my kids in school about mind mapping and, coming up with different elements and writing it all down and creatively solving problems was a lot of the book. So I really, really enjoyed it. I just hope, a couple of kids get something out, but I've sent out samples to some of the schools and I've had a few test reads, so I'm really delighted with the feedback, and even I have a few adults now who are enjoying it as well. So I hope it has a nice layer, and if there is parents or coaches, whoever want to read it, that they enjoy it.
That's great. We'll definitely be getting a copy in this house anyway. Listen, fair play. Keep up the good work and enjoy that chat. Thanks a million, Paddy.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure people can find out how to get that. Jump on Paddy's social channels. We'll tweet it out as well if you want to get a link to how to pick up a copy of Up in the Air. Right, it is 8 minutes to 9 of this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM with myself and Owen. We've plenty to come. We're going to talk rugby in a few minutes' time in the company of Alan Quinlan. Obviously, the autumn series begins this evening, so we'll get his thoughts on all of that. Some of your thoughts have been coming into us over the last while up on YouTube. San says, what happened to Stephen Kenny being the Irish Guardiola? If he were a foreign manager, he'd be getting slaughtered. 1 goal in 6 games. I think the key maybe there is that Guardiola obviously was able to dabble in the transfer market in a way that Stephen Kenny just can't. Dazza says the FAI should be picking Andorra or San Marino or Malta. Maybe we could score then. Alan Brown is the only player that ever looks like he might score. Get Robbie Keane out of retirement. I think even Robbie, as he either pushes or has moved past the 40 mark, might not be able to spark us into too much. Joseph saying that 6 Nations matches without a victory, 5 matches without a goal, 6 matches without a goal from play. 4th defeat of Kenny's toothless Ireland, he says in caps. We've not led for 1 single second of any of the 6 matches Kenny's been coach of. A. Brennan says, most embarrassing night for Irish soccer that I can remember. Who thought that it was a good idea to play England when we are a shambles? I mean, I think that is an extreme overstatement as to where we're at in terms of the development of that Irish team. They definitely have to be given time. Was everything amazing last night? I don't really think so. But, time. There's plenty of time. So that is a sort of flavour of some of the comments that are coming into us this morning. I want to let you know as well about some upcoming shows here in OTB. The big names keep on coming and all as part of our Cadbury FC series of remote roadshows. Up to this point, we've had chats with the likes of Gary Neville, Teddy Sheringham, Peggy Bonner, Shay Given, Saul Campbell, Ian Wright, Glenn Hoddle, and Harry Redknapp have all been up there. And next up are Jason McAteer and Kenny Dalglish, and that's coming your way this coming Sunday. And you can stay tuned to OTB Sports social channels for much more details and all of that. OTBsports.com to check out those previous remote roadshows, and all with thanks to Cadbury FC, and check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways on all of that. So it's coming up 5 to 9. Alan Quinlan is standing by. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, lads. How are you?
We're straight back into it with the autumn series kicking off tonight. The Ireland team named during the week. We haven't had a chance to speak to you about that. Can I ask you about Conor Murray to begin with? So he's benched out here for Jameson Gibson Park. Is this sign of things to come, do you think? What sort of an opportunity is it for Gibson Park? And what can we expect from that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a sign of things to come. Obviously, he's been under massive scrutiny, as Johnny Sexton has, and the team results haven't been that good in the last 18 months. So, look, if Gibson Park plays really well, it's going to be a tough game. So this is a kind of a real test for Gibson Park. If he plays well in this game, he promotes himself possibly to start, in Twickenham next week. So, there's a few players out of the team. I think Stander is out of it, Byrne is out of it, Aki is out of it. Will they come back in and play next week? Who knows? But I think he's given an opportunity to players, and that's the kind of pressure Murray's under. And if Gibson Park plays really well for Ireland, well, it could be the start of things to come. Who knows? But
what sort of conversation, Quinny? What sort of conversation is Andy Farrell having with Murray? Is it, listen, I know he hasn't been in terrible form over the last while. Like, is it a case of, I want to give this guy a go, see what he's about, or is it a case of almost, listen, we need to be looking at other options in this position?
No, I think there's still plenty of rugby left in Conor Murray, and he's a very strong character. I think, obviously himself and Sexton have probably come under the most scrutiny in the last 18 months because the team haven't performed well. And, they've got to take the good and the bad. They've had very successful careers, both those guys, and they're more experienced players in the team. 2 years ago, the world class was being constantly linked with both of them. I think the conversation would be, look, we've got to get more depth there. Cooney was in great form leading up to the last Six Nations back in February, and a lot of people calling for his inclusion. His form was brilliant going into that competition. It hasn't been as good. Marmion, Luke McGrath, it's the same as the fly half position, Adrian. There's a gap there has been a gap. I think the gap is closed more at scrum half. And I think, Luke McGrath, Kieran Marmion, John Cooney, and now Gibson Park are all real contenders to challenge him. And it's the way it should be for any international team. So Conor Murray is to find a little bit of spark again. He has played well, relatively well recently, since the lockdown has resumed. I suppose you look back at the first game against Leinster, he was very good with Munster, but the semi-final was, he copped a fair bit of flack for some of the kicking in that game and the overall performance. But I think the conversation would be, we're looking at our options, and that's the reality of it now.
Maybe something similar going on in the back row, and I was interested to see Peter O'Mahony get in there. Is there an element now, nearly given particularly the options that we have coming through in that position and across the back row, is there almost an element that, I don't want to be overly dramatise it, but like last chance saloon audition almost for O'Mahony to remind Farrell what he's about?
Yeah, I think he has to remind him what he's about, for sure. And like I say, it's the way it should be, when I think obviously with a new coach coming in, he's got to kind of roll the dice with everyone, give them all a fair crack at the whip, even the ones that maybe mightn't have been in great form and have delivered before. So I've always said this, you can't just discard people when they're dropped or when they don't get picked. And I think we saw the reaction from O'Mahony when he wasn't picked for the Scotland game back in February, and he comes off the bench for Doris and he played really well. I wouldn't say it's last chance saloon, because he's still a very, very good player, an effective player, but he's got to remind people, and sometimes it's down to perception as well. He's got to remind the coaches and the public that he still has a lot to offer, and he still can bring massive experience, a real competitive edge. But the type of game they play, and they're going to try and play, I believe, to be a bit more expansive and to try and have a more of an attacking threat in their locker. You want your back row heavily involved in that. So all three of them, you'll want them to get their hands on the ball. And I think that's an area where Peter has to get his hands on the ball more. And you saw he has the ability, I think, fantastic offload against Italy for Raki, and you can see his reaction because he's not a natural passer of the ball. He's massive strength, his line out, breakdown, and he's a real physical player. But obviously you'd just love to see him get his hands on the ball and run with it more, and hopefully that little bit. If you were to ask me what do we want to see from this Irish team in the Nations Cup, is a little bit more freedom. Obviously they tried to bring that to Paris, and I thought they played really well in the first half. But if you look at the stats, Adrian, 3 offloads and 2 line breaks, 2 clean line breaks, which is in contrast to what France offered that night, which was 12 clean line breaks and 14 offloads. So we're not talking about completely throwing the ball around willy-nilly, but just a little bit more accuracy. Obviously, one of the big strengths has been that accuracy in going right back to 18, but you just love to see him be. And look, I think they're going to try and be a little bit more expansive, but you've got to win this game tonight as well. That's important. And going back to what you said about O'Mahony, he's got a point to prove. There's no doubt about that.
A few questions asked at the line out over the last couple of weeks. Alan, how big a night tonight then is it for the likes of Ronan Kelleher, for the likes of Ian Henderson to prove that those guys have a future as a combination? And I think maybe at the start of the year, everybody thought Ronan Kelleher would be the go-to number 2 for Ireland as the future develops. Now is the time for him to really be trying to hold on to that jersey.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully he can get a run of games now without injury. I think he's a top quality player. He's very powerful, but so much on has happened for him so quickly, and you can see the way injuries kind of set people back. I think getting confidence at this level is a real key. So I think for Ronan Kelleher is to settle in. I think he's had a few bumps now. He's got capped. I think, there's no big razzmatazz around his selection tonight, but I think there will be scrutiny, obviously. So I think he's a top quality player, and he just needs a run of a couple of games now. So a lot of these players could do with a decent performance tonight and a win. They can move on then, because going to Twickenham next week is going to be very difficult and a different test. They'll have incredible motivation to go there and maybe put some of the wrongs against England the last couple of years right, if you like, and get a really good performance over there. But I think Henderson coming back, they all have a point to prove. These are guys who've been mainstays in the team for a number of years, O'Mahony, Henderson, and they've got to bring their leadership qualities and like you mentioned, the line-out is a really important part that it just sets the foundation for any sort of performance, what you can attack off. And I think with Ryan Baird breathing down his neck, someone who will get capped again, he's had a very unlucky injury in the last couple of weeks. Henderson has to bring a performance and a bit of an attitude, because Wales are tricky, and Alan Wynne-Jones and Will Rowlands and Faletau, Tipperick, these guys are confrontational, and they're so much on the back foot that they're going to bring a real edge tonight. So, first and foremost, they've got to get their set piece right, but be aggressive and physical as well.
Yeah, dangerous time to be playing Wales. I know you spoke to the lads about it but earlier in the week as well. Lost 5 in a row, worst run in 7 years, bit of player unrest, coach has been sacked, Warburton leaving. Anyway, with all that in the mix, Ireland to get it done tonight?
Yeah, I think they will. I think it's a very dangerous one, Adrian, because obviously Wales it's real backs to the wall stuff. So I think Ireland just have to be physical, because you just look at Tipperick and Faletau and, as I said, Wynne-Jones and these guys, Alan Wynne-Jones, Jonathan Davies in the centre, bigger. They've guys who've been there, done it all. They've been on Lions tours, they've won championships. They're not going to kind of roll over and come to Dublin. So there's going to be a real edge to this, even though I would say it's hard to get excited about the whole tournament. But this game and the English game are 2 games that I think there'll be a real edge to. So Ireland have got to be confrontational tonight. I mentioned the offloads and clean breaks. They're hope rather than you know, laying down a marker and saying they have to do that. I just love to see them obviously be brave with the ball, but they've got to win the game as well. So you lose the game playing great, it's no good. I think they got to win as well, and you can build a little bit of momentum going forward. So it'll be a real edge. I think Ireland will, you know, are good enough. That team is good enough to do it tonight. They've got to go out and deliver, obviously.
Okay, nice one, Quinny. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
That Ireland-Wales game tonight. You are watching OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Lots to come back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist? Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
And it's been a complete failure for English teams in the European formats this year, Colin.
I don't know.
Come on, it has! They had one team in the quarterfinal.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Now you're welcome back. So it is time for Scoreboard Jungle. This is our GAA quiz. It's running right across the winter inter-county season. Already this evening we've had Dr. Con Murphy and Owen Liston. I'm very happy to say another Corkonian with us. We have All-Ireland winner Noel O'Leary. Noel, how you doing?
Good job, yeah.
So listen, earlier on we had the legend that is Dr. Con Murphy on, and we had the Bomber Liston, and they both did the quiz. So Dr. Con weighed in with a very top 10 points. And the Bomber weighed in with three points.
So
Cork are already up.
That's valid. That's why we'll add to that if we can.
Good. So listen, 2 rounds, very simple, 2 rounds. Round 1 is the take your points and the goals will come round. Basically, I'll give you 30 seconds. You get 5 questions and it's 1 point per correct answer, if that makes sense.
No problem.
Okay, very good. Right, your time starts now. Who was the Cork football manager in 1990?
Billy Morgan.
Who was the 2010 Footballer of the Year?
Bernard Brogan.
How many times did Cork beat Kerry in the Senior Football Championship in the 2000s? How many times?
In the 2000s, 3.
Which club has won the most senior club football titles in Cork?
Nemo Rangers.
Name one. Your time is up, but I've started, so I'll finish. Name one of Cork's 2012 All-Stars. Name one of them.
2012, Colm O'Neill.
Jeez, that's tidy, Noel. That is tidy. Who was the Cork football manager in 1990? It was Billy Morgan. Who was the 2010 Footballer of the Year? Bernard Brogan. Jeez, I'd say you noted that down in Cork, did you?
Oh, we did. Don't worry. We won't let that one go out all day.
I'd say that was a talking point. How many times did Cork beat Kerry in the Senior Football Championship in the 2000s? You went for 3. You beat them 4 times, in fact, 4 times. Okay. 18 games played, 4 draws, 14 Kerry wins. Which club has won the most senior championships in Cork? The answer, Nemo, correct. And you said Colm O'Neill in 2012, which is also correct. Alongside Aidan Walsh, he won an All-Star. So you're 4 out of 5 to kick things off, Noel. Very strong start. Round 2 is the going for goal round. Mm-hmm. So basically, similar deal, 30 seconds, 5 questions. Each correct answer is worth 3 points, but there is a sudden death quality to this. So basically, if you get your question right, you get your 3 points, and we move on to the next question. If you get the question wrong, you are finito, sudden death.
No problem.
Okay, right, your time starts now. Noel, who was the 2008 Footballer of the Year?
2008, Sean Kavanagh.
Correct. What club is Mayo legend Kieran MacDonald from? What club?
Crossmalina.
Correct again. Which Ulster county has won the most All-Ireland titles in football?
Down.
It's a tricky one. Cavan.
Oh.
Yes. So that means you join Dr. Con Murphy on 10 points. Very nice 10 points, Noel O'Leary. Geez, the Cork boys have it.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. Bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Plus, put your feet up and cheer your bets home with free live streaming on every UK and Irish horse race. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest sporting events right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Welcome back. It is 9 minutes past 9. It is time for our GAA quick picks after Pat Spillane was screenshotted and shared by everybody last week. It's been a bad week to be a predictor when it comes to GAA. We are putting our necks on the line once again this week. A quick reminder of the score so far. Tommy Rooney trailing everybody with 17 correct predictions from the first 2 weeks, 7 incorrect predictions. Myself and Adrian level at 18 correct, 6 incorrect apiece. And Will O'Callaghan leading the way at 20 and 4. We'll come to you in a moment, but we're going to kick things off with Galway against Mayo, where myself and Tommy and Will are all going for Mayo. Adrian, why have you gone for Galway?
A lot of the same rationale that I went for last week. Only you might remember that I said that I was tipping Roscommon, and they were obviously they were not very good. They were absolutely awful, and I did say that you just don't know what that Mayo team. And I really don't know what a lot of the fuss is about when it comes to Mayo. If I'm being 100% honest, they've beaten Leitrim and they've beaten an awful Roscommon team. Galway being without Comer is obviously a bit of an issue for them. They have a couple of other injuries as well. I don't think there's going to be very much in it either way. I think Mayo being overhyped is a large part of the reason. And also, I need to create a point of difference with you three chumps, because I got to catch up at Will somehow. And so, if I'm leaning a bit 50-50 in one direction, I got to go against G. And you were all very predictable. I went with Mayo, so I knew I'd have a point of difference. Sometimes there are just correct predictions to be made. Let's have a look at the rest of the football games this weekend. All of us are predicting Donegal to beat Armagh. All of us are predicting Cavan to beat Down, except for Tommy Rooney. Tommy, why Down?
Why Down? I like Down football, and I just think now what I backed Fermanagh last week against them, I thought Ricey's Fermanagh might be able to pull a surprise out and shock them, because Fermanagh do that. They sicken teams, but Paddy Tally's Down looked good last week. I thought they were undercooked coming into the championship. They hadn't got a game, a proper game. Like Galway, you're kind of wondering, are they able to find that form? I don't think Galway can find that form at the weekend. I think it suits Down, having played that game. Galway could have done with playing Sligo. That's why I'm going for Mayo. To be honest with you, Owen, it's going to be very, very close. Again, like Adrian, I need a point of difference. I need to make up a bit of ground. I know. So
you don't believe Down are going to win?
I do believe Down are going to win. I do, but I think it's going to be really, really close. Like the bookies are saying it's a point, 2 points either way. I think Down are going to sneak it. And I think Caolan Mooney looks really, really good. He looks like the kid that we saw playing Hogan Cup football. He's back again. He's flying, and he's probably going to run the show. I think Cavan, I don't know if they're going to have James Smith starting. If James Smith's starting, they've got a better chance. But I'm going for Down this week.
Dublin are going to beat Laois according to all of us. They're going to beat Kildare according to all of us. Are you worried about any of your football picks, Will O'Callaghan?
Yeah, look, Fermanagh and Down is probably the Cavan Down game is probably the one that causes a bit of kind of concern, because Cavan looked a little bit flat at times last weekend, and understandably they've had to play on successive weekends, which is never easy. And like Mickey Graham was saying that afterwards too, that realistically a break is what they needed, but this is this gauntlet they're having to run through. I think the two Leinster games are quite easy to predict. Saw Kildare and weren't particularly impressed by them against Offaly last Sunday night, and yeah, there's no way that Dublin aren't going to beat Laois. So those two are pretty easy to pick. Again, I would have the same concern as Tommy about Galway. Galway are coming into this having not played since they were beaten by Dublin in the National Football League. Mayo have had a couple of games now to get their eye
in the long grass, Will.
Well, look, Adrian, that can be your argument for it, but unless Galway have done everything right in their preparation for this, it's very difficult to get up to that match speed into a final. And unfortunately, I think they've been affected by the COVID-19 more so than most other counties going into this weekend.
Let's look at the hurling predictions. Kilkenny against Galway is the Leinster final. Everybody is going for Galway except for Will O'Callaghan. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Everybody's predicting Limerick to beat Waterford. Everybody's predicting Tip to beat Cork, which will just be music to Cork's ears once again this weekend. And everybody, with the exception of Tommy, is backing Davy to get one over Brian Lowe, and they're backing Wexford to beat Clare. Will, we'll go to you again here. Kilkenny to beat Galway, you think?
Yeah, this feels a little bit like Tommy Walsh logic based on watching his preview with Jamesy O'Connor during the week on Off the Ball. But yeah, look, I just think Kilkenny will edge this one. Again, this is for me the most difficult game of the weekend to predict across hurling or football. Like, there's such a good argument to make for Galway, given how impressive they were against Wexford, given the form that Conor Whelan is in going into this game. But I just kind of fancy Kilkenny. I think they let the game slip a little bit against Dublin in the one time that we've seen them in Championship so far this year. But I think they'll be more focused on this. Again, worth remembering that both teams will be qualifying for the knockout stages of the All-Ireland too. So that takes a little bit of edge away. I can't believe that Tommy is going for Clare, particularly with the news overnight that David McInerney's appeal has failed.
Hold on now, Will. This prediction was put in before the McInerney appeal came through. So I was fully sure that McInerney was going to get off.
And was that the difference? Is that the difference for you, the presence of McInerney?
Okay, Dave McInerney's a huge loss, but to be honest, I'm not backing Clare to beat Wexford here. I'm backing Tony Kelly to beat Wexford here. He scored 30 out of Clare's 51 scores over the last 2 games. Look, Laois came back against them, Eddie Brennan's Laois. Clare were better than the final score probably suggests at the end. They played with 14 men throughout. There's an awful lot on the line here. I hate to fall back in it, but I need to make up ground on Will O'Callaghan. While he may be top of the predictions table, I would also like to point out that I made the prediction of the week last weekend. I told you all to look out for Jordan Morris, the young Meath superstar. He scored 3-4, and he's going to do it again this weekend against Kildare, and we're going to sneak through.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's still 1 point. Meath to beat Wicklow wasn't exactly Nostradamus stuff, Tommy Rooney, but thank you.
Prediction of the weekend.
Any, very briefly before you wrap, any worry about Meath this weekend, Tommy?
I think this is the exact kind of game that I need Meath to win to be able to back up the last 2 years of abuse I've given you for the power rankings. Look, they've had so many close calls against Division 1 teams. Kildare aren't a Division 1 team. They just aren't. And Meath need to go out and win a battle, regardless of how it comes about. They look good against Wicklow. I thought Wicklow would be a bit better than they were. But the best thing for me is that they're really solid around midfield. Their running game is looking really good. And they've added a couple of young footballers at the minute that are brilliant, better than we've seen in the last couple of years. So Kildare are quietly moving nicely though. And it could be a shootout between Jimmy Hyland and Jordan Morris this weekend.
Good stuff. Very quick picks this week. Good luck to everybody except for Will O'Callaghan. Adrian.
That's something I can get on board with. Right, that is where we're at there. Your quick picks for the weekend. We'll update them again next Friday. And we'll all sort of anxiously wait on some of those games and see exactly how all that pans out. I think there's certainly not much debate with some of those picks there today. A lot of agreement across the board with a couple of little points of difference. So that's where we're at on all of that. We're going to take it through what's happening across the back pages now and let you know what's happening in the newspapers and also on OTBSports.com this morning. There's lots of good stuff up there, so get yourself along. There's some reaction, obviously, from the game last night at Wembley. Damien Delaney, quite critical, measured criticism is how I would describe that on the show last night, and some of his thoughts up there. Shane Duffy is too good a player not to come out of the poor form, says Damien Delaney there, but also says that he's suffering a crisis of confidence. John Giles and player ratings and plenty more as well, besides up on OTBSports.com this morning. In the newspapers, kick off at the Irish Times. It's a disappointing night for Ireland as Kenny's side failed to match up. Writes Emma Malone there as that Harry Maguire goal slips past Darren Randolph. Ken Early's thoughts too. Ireland's prison break doomed to failure as magnetic Grealish rubs it in. Very much a case of that last night. Some good shots of Declan Rice on the touchline walking past Stephen Kenny as well at one stage yesterday evening. The Irish Examiner this morning, Cahill and Bevins have added layers to that Waterford wall, as we've been discussing the company of Paddy Stapleton just a little while ago there. They're the thoughts of Derek McGrath ahead of that big game this weekend. Hopes high that Keane will play for Cork in the Munster final. This is the game breaker, of course, against Kerry. And on a similar note, tip Havo Reardon as long as they stay in the championship. And so we should see how long that is. And also Ronan O'Gara's Coleman side there. The Daily Telegraph this morning, the lead splash picture there is about Paul Casey sprinting to the Masters lead. League One and 2 clubs agree £50 million bailout. In the Mirror, not good enough, Kenny. There's no excuses for that performance on the back page of the Mirror there, and Shane struggles as well. In the Irish Daily Sun, a bitter 0 to swallow, writes Neil O'Riordan on the back. Defeat is tough to take for Doherty, and also some stuff from the Masters. Not good enough. Doherty embarrassed by goal drought is the splash headline of the back page of the Star this morning, and the thoughts of Mark McCadden inside. The Irish Daily Mail, the wait goes on. Philip Quinn reflects on England 3, Ireland 0. Sexton fuss put aside ahead of Wales clash, writes Rory Keane. John Fogarty's been out to say that the shaking the head coming off the pitch in Paris, thing of the past now. The Times, Maguire leads by example. Casey and Woods make the early running. in the Guardian this morning, also the shot of Harry Maguire after scoring that goal last night. Southgate's 3 lines. England see off Republic of Ireland Wembley friendly, with Grealish taking his chance to shine on his second start, of course, for his country. The Irish Independent is Wembley woe for Kenny Troops, and competitor Sexton ready to put Paris behind him, insists Fogarty. That's Rory O'Connor there ahead of tonight's game. The Racing Post has a preview of Ireland-Wales on the back page, and the Herald, lockdown in London. Doherty keeps faith after an England demolition job, are the thoughts there inside of Aidan Fitzmaurice. So that is what's happening across the back pages for you this morning, and we still have lots to come. We have, I think we've Shane Hannah's standing by. Have we, Shane? Are you there?
Morning, lads. I'm here. How are you keeping?
Good. How are you getting on? What are you leading the way with us in terms of live sports stuff that's happening? Massive weekend, obviously.
Huge weekend. We should probably start with the Masters. Someone had pointed out on Twitter that watching the live stream of the rain falling down yesterday at Amen Corner was better than nothing, and better than the lack of sport we had for so long. So for a lot of people, I guess, to have that back and to have those pictures, even though it's a bit weird to see Augusta with the brown leaves in the autumn time, but to have it back in any description was great.
I was wondering, Shane, if there was actually going to be a little bit of skullduggery from everybody at Augusta National, paint the leaves or something like that, because there has been suggestions in the past they paint the grass and that everything looks a little bit too perfect at Augusta National. So I'm happy to see a little bit of flaws, a little bit of cosmetic flaws in the makeup of Augusta National. Like a few brown leaves never went astray.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Truman Show. It's just it's got this kind of fake feel to the whole thing. I mean, I was in Augusta myself before, not at the course, but the town of Augusta. And to be fair, not to be disrespectful to the people of Augusta, but it's a bit of a crap town. It's kind of an hour outside of Atlanta, and it's a little bit run down. And I'm sure there are nice areas of Augusta as well, but the course has this kind of dystopian or kind of utopian feel compared to the dystopian nature of the town, which is really strange, because you think about the town, you think, oh, this must be in like the Hiltons and lovely area, but it kind of stands in stark contrast to the area around it, which is weird.
It's been to be honest, I didn't actually get to watch very much of it yesterday. There was so much going on, and the football was on, and all the madness going on last night, and then obviously it was rain delayed and all that sort of stuff. But now we'll be keeping a close eye on it over the course of the day. And of course, GMAC is tipping along nicely. That wasn't actually a huge amount of conversation about him in advance of it, and I mean, really, why would there be, I suppose? But he's just outside the top 50, level par 72 for his round. Not a huge amount of people talking about him, but GMAC could be a live option here this weekend.
He certainly could. Adrian, I'll tell you something. And there's so many tough holes to choose from on the course. There's, you've got your Amen Corner. We've mentioned that already. You've got your Pink Dogwood, Eisenhower's Tree, Raised Creek. People often ask me my biggest fear as a golfer, and I often give a surprising answer. It sometimes can be snakes, alligators, spiders. Yikes! But certainly Carolina Cherry, that par 4 ninth, hit a double bogey yesterday. It was pretty tough. So a tough first round for me, but tie for 50 first, I'll take that at the end of the day. And if I could have had any superpower to maybe teleport myself away from that double bogey at that particular moment in time, it would have been done. But it was a pretty tough opening day. But Adrian and Owen, yourselves, as soon as you get off the course, it's straight away to relaxation mode, to dinner and drinks. Definitely dinner somewhere, dinner and a movie. You could stick on a Blu-ray if you want. I usually resort to Shawshank Redemption, Gladiator, something along those lines. Maybe something a bit more recent, The Social Network. But I try to stay off the social networks myself, the Twitter and the Facebook. But tough enough opening day for GMAC.
I got a little bit of interference as you were talking there, GMAC, and actually Kenny Cunningham came through there at one point. I didn't know what was going on there, but listen, GMAC will be hoping he's in Butler's cabin, and I'm sure he'll relax with a few cold beers if he can manage to get that done come Sunday evening.
Yeah, we should mention the other Irish players as well, lads. It would be unfair of us to leave out the others. Rory McIlroy and James Sugru, of course, among those that will need to complete their rounds today because of that darkness that kind of emerged late yesterday evening on the Augusta National course. So McIlroy will recommence his first round from a greenside bunker on the 10th hole from level par alongside playing partner world number 1 Dustin Johnson. Johnson was 3 under after 9, so showing up Rory McIlroy a little bit as they played alongside each other. Sugrue is also halfway through his round, the 22-year-old from Mallow, of course, playing in his final tournament as an amateur. He'll tee off from the first hole this morning on 4 over par. G-Mac, who we mentioned, opened with a level par round of 72. Shane Lowry shot a 2 over round of 74. He started on the 10th hole, but the Open champion carding bogeys at 11 and 14. But then at 13 straight pars. So solid, I guess, is how you describe Shane Lowry's opening round yesterday. Tiger Woods equaled his lowest ever opening round at the Masters with a 4 under 68. The reigning champion showing no signs of form in the lead into the final major of the year. But Tiger says his familiarity with the surroundings definitely helped.
Well, I understand how to play this golf course. And this is a golf course that allows, I think, experience. You look at guys like Raymond throughout the years, or Jack, and now Bernhard and Freddie. They do so well, late into their careers, just understanding how to play the golf course. And I've had, I'll explain to Tom, I had a lot of great practice rounds early in my career, and a lot of past champions that really showed me the ropes of how to play this golf course. I know every hole's been basically redesigned and resurfaced, but the overall landscapes haven't changed, and just understanding that from year to year, it really does help.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting stuff, and I know that obviously there's a whole pile of players yet to finish out their rounds, and Padraig Harrington talking to us the other night was talking about the organisers defending the course against certain players, like specifically DeChambeau, but I wonder about their capacity to do that, to like change hole positions and all that sort of stuff when the turnaround is so tight. But listen, it's like you said, it's Disney World, Shane, and maybe they've got all those boxes covered.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting to hear the some of the English commentators yesterday, as well as Lee Westwood and Paul Casey, made pretty good starts to their opening rounds. The way they were talking, you almost thought Paul Casey had already won the tournament quite early on. But to be fair to Paul Casey, what an opening round for him. 7 under par, 65. So he'll be fairly confident heading into today's action. But a 2-shot lead he holds over an American trio, Webb Simpson, Xander Schauffele and Justin Thomas. So Simpson and Schauffele ended their opening rounds with 65s, while Thomas, he'd been 5 under through 10 holes. He was flying before his final round was suspended due to that darkness creeping in on the Georgia course. Japan's Hideki Matsuyama, the Englishman we mentioned, Lee Westwood, South African Louis Westhuizen, and the 2018 champion, Patrick Reed, were in the clubhouse. Further shot back in that group with Tiger Woods. Casey has only one top 5 finish in 13 Masters appearances and missed the cut last year, but says he loves being back at the iconic Augusta National.
This season's been flat. I've looked forward to this week for a long time. I know there's no patrons out there, but it's a golf course I love to play. The chance to play it in 2020 in a very different situation was something I was looking forward to, and I've put together a great round of golf today.
Yeah, you mentioned Bryson DeChambeau there, Adrian. The US Open champion had a fairly tough start to his round. Everyone talking about this guy in the build-up. His tough start, though, included a double bogey at the par 5 13th, having started his round on the 10th. He did recover quite nicely, though, before the tournament. He said par for him at Augusta National is 67. In the end, though, he shot a 2 under 70, or 3 over by Bryson's own reckoning. That the scientist, speaking afterwards, says he struggled early on, but was pleased to have come through the day, finishing with a 6-footer for birdie.
There was a lot of patience out there. I struggled to start, didn't make the birdie on 10 like I thought I was, and it was hold on to your horses for about halfway through, and luckily I was able to make a birdie on 16 and right the ship a little bit. 2, hit a great drive, had a great eagle opportunity, and kind of kept flowing from there, and unfortunately made bogey on 7, a bad tee shot. Came back strong at 8 and 9, made birdies. I've been proud of myself for the fact that I've looked at this whole tournament as I'm still kind of an underdog to the field, to the total field. I personally think if you take it as maybe individualized, it could be different, but there's plenty of major championships out there, winners out there, and there's plenty of great golfers that have won a lot of PGA Tour events. And look, I still haven't won out here, so I got to go get it done.
I don't know what your thoughts on Bryson are, lads. I had to cut some of that clip out because he went in depth on his swing and analysing his shots, as Bryson tends to do.
Talking the hell out of it. That thing. I thought he said at the start of the clip there that there was a lot of pigeons out there. I'm assuming I heard that incorrectly.
I can't remember what he said there, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bryson was taking into account pigeons and bird flights into his round. But he's an extraordinary character, and someone who, if you were playing alongside him, you either just completely ignore what he's saying, or you become absolutely demented to listening to his running commentary of his round. So strange guy, but great golfer, and you'll either be rooting for him massively this weekend, or you will really want him to fail.
Strange guy, great golfer.
Yeah, well, it kind of sums him up. But he's one of those enigmas where we're all talking about him. And look, he's definitely changed golf and has changed golf in the last number of years, and will go on to change it over the next couple of years. But he's got his major off his back now, so we can kind of relax heading into Augusta. And if he's wearing that green jersey at the end of the week, I think a lot of people will be upset. The golf purists will be upset. The golf weekly nuts that maybe
the golf geekery.
Exactly, but we should say as well that this year's tournament sees threesomes being played out on the course. Players starting from both the first and 10th holes over the first 2 rounds for the very first time. The ceremonial tee-off as well, which started the tournament in near darkness yesterday. It was actually quite hilarious to see Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player hitting those tee shots in front of a large crowd as well, it should be said. But that opening round will resume today at around 12:30 Irish time. So we've got 3 hours to wait until the the opening round resumes. So do you want to run through a few other stories, lads, before we finish up?
We're actually out of time, Shane. We had so much time talking about the golf, which was right and proper that we did that and got that reaction and heard from GMAC, of course, most importantly and all, and got that unbelievable hot take on Bryson DeChambeau. So thanks a million. Good man. Enjoy the weekend.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks a lot. Strange man. Good golfer. I mean, I think that when it comes to hot takes on Bryson DeChambeau, you're not going to hit it any more succinct than that. That's pretty much it from us for the weekend. I don't know, Owen, if you're still there, what's the big agenda? What's the big plan for the weekend?
Not much, to be honest. What about yourself?
Nothing. I'm going to watch. I'm going to fill my boots with sport, left, right and centre. I'm a bit with Quinny on the autumn series, been a little bit made up, but I won't care about that. Obviously, come kick off. I'm not like these GAA lads that he was giving out about. I'm not at all cynical about it, and I can't wait. And what another jam-packed, unbelievable weekend of sport. And without your crew in there on, I presume do you enjoy the championship more now with them out? Does it take a bit of the tension out of it?
I just won't watch it.
I go out of that. You'll watch it even more. You watch it, you'll flagellate yourself even more as the championship. We're better than them. We could have beaten them. You'll be having that thought every other second.
For sure. Well, enjoy the weekend sports.
Yeah, you too. Good man. Thanks a million on the line there. And here's a bit of a reminder of what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today from 1 o'clock. OTB Gold. Emmanuel Petit is the subject of that chat there. At 3 o'clock, it's Friday Night Racing Live with Ger and Johnny. Tony Sheridan is the subject of Team 33's League of Ireland Legend today from 4. 6 o'clock, OTB Gold, the Life and Times of Johnny Caban, and at 7 then, Off the Ball is live, Friday Night Racing there again, and part 2 of our Connacht final Super Value Roadshow. So that's all coming your way a little bit later on. OTB AM is live weekday mornings from 7:30, and we'll see you again on Monday morning with all the reaction, obviously, of course, from the weekend. But don't go anywhere, because right now we're bringing you last night's Thursday night football with John Giles.
You got through the birthday weekend all right?
Yeah. I enjoyed it last week. I thought it was very good. The lads gave me a great send off, I must say. Yeah, no, we had a great night, and we had a great reaction as well, and any amount of well wishes and happy birthdays coming through to you as well from the listeners. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. The football is back. Ireland are playing tonight up against England. Kicks off at 8 o'clock, so just over half an hour away now. The new team is in, and the news from an Irish point of view is not good once again. Seamus Coleman, it seems, have picked up some sort of a recurrence of probably the hamstring injury in training last night, so he's out. So the Irish team is Randolph in goals, a back four of Christie, Duffy, Egan and Doherty. It'll be Hendrick, Brown and Howerhan in midfield, and a front three of O'Dowda, Ida and Horgan. Stephen Kenny must feel like he's a pretty unlucky general right now with the amount of injuries he's picked up throughout the last 2-3 months. Yeah. Well, Coleman's a big loss, Nathan. And are some of the other defenders injured as well? Yeah, Enda Stevens was ruled out. He's also without Aaron Connolly, Callum Robinson. James McCarthy pulled out of the squad as well today. So that's 5 players who may have started. It's not good news. Luckily enough, it's a friendly match, Nathan, as we know. A big match at Wembley for the lads. It's going to be a tough night, I would imagine. A tough night. I know England will. I don't know the England team. I suppose they put a few relatively new players in as well. But I think it'll be a tough night for our lads tonight.
Yeah, it's a busy week.
Fingers crossed, Nathan, you know.
It's obviously a busy week, and this is the friendly, and there's competitive games in the Nations League to come against Wales and Bulgaria, and we've reflected on the results already and the lack of goals and the lack of results under Stephen Kenny so far. He needs something, you feel, though. He needs to get a little bit of momentum from somewhere over the next month or next week.
Well, he needs a good performance, Nathan. You know, I mean, a win would be a great boost, but playing well would be the most important thing tonight. You know, I wouldn't fancy him to win at all. I think England would be too strong for us. But a good performance, a good professional performance would be a step in the right direction anyway.
We'll talk more about that, and we'll talk more next Thursday night about the 3 games, and we'll have a good sense then of exactly where Ireland are now under Stephen Kenny. Just looking back on the week that's gone, Liverpool-Manchester City was the big game of the Premier League season so far. For an hour, it was brilliant. It was high tempo, it was all action, and then it just seemed to fade out. And we've seen this week Joe Gomez is out with a potential long-term injury for Liverpool. All these games, do you feel they're catching up in the players?
I think it's bound to happen, Nathan. I can't see where, you know, these are fit players, obviously, but if you're playing the amount of matches they played in, and don't forget, they had a very, very small break between the end of last season and the start of this season. I think it was about 3 weeks or something like that. And as we know, with the virus, we know that's what happened. That to pack all the games in that they did towards the end of the season, what we regard as last season, was unbelievable. And then to start off again after 3 weeks, I don't think it can be done without having muscular injuries, particularly, Nathan. I think it's impossible. To go. When people say, "Oh, they're professional footballers," but professional footballers are human beings, and you can only do so much. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a lot more injuries, Nathan. Muscular injuries, hamstrings and calf muscles. I'd be amazed if we don't, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, I think we're already seeing it. When you were playing, you would often talk about the Christmas schedule, and you would play an insane amount of games over Christmas. Yeah. Was this ever an issue, did you find, where the body just couldn't cope with the amount of football you were being asked to play?
Well, funny enough, Nathan, I personally, on my personal feeling, I hardly got injured at any of the matches.
Right.
Over the years. There was 3 at Christmas and 3 at Easter time. But you'll find that we had breaks in between, Nathan, you know. So although we did that, and it was a one-off, you'd find that from that match there'd be a week's break to the next matches. There weren't as many international matches. In those days, you didn't have the what's now the Caribou, is it Caribou Cup?
Yeah. The League Cup,
you didn't have as many international matches. Now we have the Nations Cup in the summer. So the players are playing a lot more matches than I played my players in my time actually played. A lot more. But the 3 off was a one-off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nathan? Like it was Christmas, and you had a break in between, but then you had a good rest in between after that to get going again. I mean, the lads are playing now. They're playing on, you know, Saturday, Monday or Tuesday, and back again and that Saturday morning and all that. Haven't had little or no rest or season break. You know, we used to have it in those days a lot longer, and now you could have 6 or 7 weeks break in the summer, or 8 weeks at that particular time. Players are not having that, especially this summer. 3 weeks, I think, Nathan, was it? At the most, 3 weeks break.
Yeah, before they were back in pre-season. Yeah, exactly that. I don't know if anything can be done about it because, well, money talks more than ever at the moment, and UEFA want their money, FIFA want their money, the Premier League want their money, the FA want their money, and they get that. They need to have these matches. They need to have them on television. But is it going to affect?
Though, Nathan, that's the problem. You know, like there's an awful lot of greed attached to these amount of matches. I mean, for example, the Caribou Cup. Why not cancel that? And as we know, the Nations Cup is it? They created a competition when we were having a break. The only thing the players that had a break was between the European Nations, the European Cup and the World Cup.
Yeah.
The European Championships, and now they created another competition in between, the Nations Cup, and they're playing them this week. That should have been cancelled. There's just far too matches being played, and it's greed from the associations because they don't pay the players, don't forget. It's the clubs that pay the players. And they're paying the price for it. Not the internationals are paying the price.
Well, you have this
internationals all over the world now. You know, they're going to have the South American. So teams and it's always the top players who are playing the most league matches and cup matches that will play the most international matches. And it's not right. It's just not on.
Yeah, it is. Even tonight's game between England and the Republic of Ireland makes no sense. Neither country particularly wants to play it, but the television money means that there has to be a game tonight, so the game has to go ahead. Is it going to affect the quality of football we see? Because you do look at that Liverpool-Manchester City game, and it was so good when both teams were at full intensity, but it just felt as though they couldn't keep it up for the full 90 minutes. Are we going to see more of that?
Oh, definitely, Nathan. You know, footballers are human beings. They're highly trained lads, but they're not trained in a normal season to be playing the amount of matches they're playing after having such a short break. I've never known such a short break in football with the 3 week thing. Obviously, last season had to carry on as late as it did, and then the players have a short rest and then back into it again. You can't do it, Nathan. You know, like I know when I played, couldn't wait for the season to finish to have a break.
Right.
And in those days, we got 6 or 7 weeks. But so you needed that.
Yeah, you felt your body needed it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because when you were in the running, like all the top teams, like Leeds were one of the top teams, so we were always in the running for the league or the cup or the European. So we played an awful lot of matches. Not as many of the lads are playing today, but we played a lot of matches. Well, you couldn't wait for the end of the season, Nathan, to have a break. Obviously, if you were in the cup final, you were delighted to be in the cup final or one of the European cups. It was great. But you definitely needed the break. Now they're not getting any break. And it's the international associations. They're the real greedy ones, Nathan, because they don't have to pay the players. You know, it's the clubs. They can create all the competitions they want. And it's a money maker for them. But all these players have to go back to their clubs. And it's the clubs that's paying the price for the amount of matches that's played. You'll see more and more injuries, in my opinion, especially hamstrings and calf muscles and all, and other serious ones as well. Because the more matches you play, the more chance you have of having a serious injury.
It's not clear yet how long Joe Gomez will be out for, but it looks as though it'll be several months at the very least. Virgil van Dijk is out for the rest of the season. Joel Matip has had constant injury problems, though he's back at the moment. Fabinho's out. What does Jurgen Klopp do? He can't sign a player to January. Is there another option that they can try at centre-back if it's not one of the young lads?
Well, that's what he has to do. He's no choice in it. As you say, he can't bring anybody in. And it does happen in football. You know, Liverpool went last season hardly having an injury. And now they've got 3 or 4 injuries, particularly to the defenders. That's the way it works. But obviously, the more matches you're going to play, the more injuries you're going to get. That's just a fact, Nathan. And Liverpool are due to play a lot of matches. They played a lot of matches going into at the end of last season. There was no break in the season, Nathan. What did they get? 3 weeks, was it? The teams?
Yeah,
the lads?
Before pre-season,
3 weeks. Haven't played, you know, a season that they need to pack all the matches in to get the season in. Most unusual circumstances. But definitely the international associations haven't helped in any way. I mean, the fact that we're playing tonight in a friendly match, Nathan, is ridiculous, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
You know, the Nations Cup thing, the one that they created, that should have been cancelled. Definitely.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was very strong on it, that Manchester United were forced to play early on Saturday, having been over in Turkey on Wednesday. But despite that, they still managed to go and get the victory. And it's a consistent conversation now that every time Manchester United are in trouble and on the verge of a crisis, they manage to dig out a result and put together an impressive performance. Which is the real Manchester United? Is it the side that went and beat Everton, or is it the side that were beaten in Istanbul and they were beaten by Arsenal the week before? Well, it's a side that had those results, Nathan. You see, what you'll find, it's called inconsistency. Like when you see Liverpool last year, Manchester City, when they were winning, the same attitude week in and week out. Now, what I found with teams over the years, probably played in a couple of teams, in doing what Manchester United do, you get a dreadful result. So now they have to prove that wasn't a real result, right? Then you get a couple of weeks of that, quite reasonable performances,
and then you get another downer. And it's called inconsistency. When you hear managers talking about, if you want to win the Premiership, you have to be consistent. A consistent effort that brings results week in, week out, week in, week out. What you see with Manchester United is a good performance after a very bad performance. So that's the players making up for the bad performance, right? But then they have another good performance, Nathan, and the previous bad performance is forgotten. So they go into another one. It's called inconsistency. You know, you hear all the teams talking about, if you want to win the Premiership, you have to be consistent. And it's usually a consistency of effort. Because all teams are not going to play well week in and week out. But the effort can be there week in and week out.
Is it that? Is it effort? Is it attitude that the problem is with the Manchester United players?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, the Solskjaer might not be helping if he's picking, making a lot of changes which teams do. Or what's his best team? What's he going to do? Is he going to play Pogba? Is he not going to play Pogba? That uncertainty shouldn't be there. Again, if you look at Liverpool, a perfect example last year, there was no uncertainty with them at all. It was virtually the same team week in and week out with Liverpool. And certainly the same effort week in and week out. You don't win it unless you have the consistency is down to effort, the same effort in every match you play. And that's why Manchester United were so great in their day, but particularly with Keane. Keane's effort week in, week out, week in, week out. You hear him on the television. The first thing he talks about is effort, because that's what he did himself, and that's what made him a great player. But it also drove Manchester United to be consistent. In other words, you play Arsenal when their time, top of the league. You knew you had to do your stuff. The following week, you're playing Burnley, might be bottom of the league. It's the same effort. But you find with Manchester United, against some of the top teams, or one week to play great, the following week you wouldn't know them as the same team.
Yeah.
That's just effort and consistency of performance.
Well, on that then, because we didn't have a chance last week to talk about Manchester United against Arsenal and the analysis around that. You might remember Roy Keane was on it. He was on about attitude and motivation and how it's not a manager's job to motivate players.
Well, it is, but anyway, go on.
That's the question, because obviously Roy Keane was so self-motivated, he didn't need it. But
exactly. But you see, Roy is very, very good on the telly. But when I listen to Roy talking on the telly, it's usually about what he did himself. You know what I mean? Like, if he's analysing a player, he'll always start at what he did himself. Quite rightly, because what made Keane a great player was his effort week in and week out, week in, week out, week in, out, and he'd drive the others on. That's what he talks about. Quite rightly. Sorry, Nathan, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. Is that does a different Manchester United manager? So the speculation around Pochettino has started up again around Manchester United. Does a different manager get a different attitude out of those players, or actually, when you look at that group, is there just an issue that no manager can solve?
Well, first things first. If a manager is not really positive about getting the consistency from the players, whatever those players might be, shouldn't be in the club. That's your starting point. They should be out. They should be out. Now, I'm talking about Pogba in particular. We're still talking about Pogba on his day, when he's in the mood. You don't win things with those guys. Keane wouldn't have lived with Pogba. He was driving himself on, he was driving everybody else on. That's why he was such an important member. And I keep going back to him because he was the ideal man to talk about in having the right attitude week in and week out, right? But if you look at Liverpool last year when they won the league, look at all those players, Nathan. You couldn't name me one player that people talked about like Pogba, whether it be Henderson, Salah, Mane, all these players, all season, the two fullbacks, Sam Van Dijk. I can't remember a match that you could say, no, Liverpool, or two matches, they were great the other day, but they weren't so good the next day. There was a consistency about them. And that's what I said. I wasn't joking when I said, I don't think Klopp would take Pogba for nothing.
Right.
He wouldn't have him in the place. Just wouldn't have him. It wouldn't allow it to happen. And that's what Manchester. You go back to Manchester United under Ferguson. Could you name any player that played on his day? Or he turned it on his day. Scholes, Beckham, Giggs, Keane, Neville. All these players. These all became terrific, great players because of the consistency. Not week in and week out, year in and year out, Nathan. That's what they did. I was very lucky to play in a team with Leeds. Year in, year out, people say, oh, you should have won more than you did. But we were there every year for 10 years because of the attitude. And your attitude has to be better. Going to the likes of Burnley, who were just an ordinary team, than going to what Arsenal would be one of our nearest, or Liverpool. Because when you're playing Liverpool and these big teams on the day, you're already up for it. You know, because you're nervous. But when you go to Burnley, or players that or teams you're expected to beat, they're usually the hardest, because you have to get yourself up for those matches. And that's what Manchester United did in their great days. That's what Liverpool did in their great days. You know, when you had to get Dalglish and Hansen, Souness, all these great players. That's what made them great players and great teams, and win things year in and year out. For Manchester United, you have 2 good performances, 2 bad performances.
Yeah. And it can't just be one player, though. As much as Pogba has been a huge disappointment and is probably the most inconsistent, and all right, they spent an incredible amount of money. I think there's players throughout that team, throughout that squad, who one week look like world beaters, one week don't turn up.
Nathan, who got them there?
Well, a variety of different managers. A variety of different managers brought them in.
Yeah, and Solskjaer has got. I mean, he's been there as long as he's been there. And many did he bring in himself? But then once you get them in, then you have to do the business on them. And that hasn't happened at Manchester United. It just hasn't happened.
Well, does Solskjaer then, because he hasn't made a huge amount of signings, and we haven't seen much of Donny van de Beek, but he did bring in Bruno Fernandes, who does look like a player who has a bit of character about him.
Yeah, he's a very, very good player in the position that he plays, Nathan. But you'd have to, and I wonder, is Solskjaer responsible for bringing these players in? Right? That's the first thing. I don't know. I doubt it. But when he brings them in, he has to have the authority to get from them what they should be given. It's like when Ferguson brought in players, or any Klopp brings in players. He demands it of them. Doesn't matter who they are. I know that's not happening. If you look at the inconsistency at Manchester United, I mean, it just doesn't happen in the top clubs. Consistency of performance week in, week out. Klopp demands it. You know, Ferguson demanded it in a big way. So did Liverpool in their great days. If you look at all the characters who play for Liverpool, you couldn't say for Souness playing, on his day he's great.
Yeah,
he's in the mood, he's great.
Every day.
I can't name one player that played for Manchester United when Scholes and Keane and all these lads were playing, where he had one player that you could say, well, on his day he's great. None of them.
Yeah.
None of them. All the great teams have fellas, week in, week out, attitude. And that doesn't happen at Manchester United. To get a bad defeat, now they have to make up. Now they have 2 good performances, and they're slacking off again.
Yeah. We've had
unfortunately, that's the case. Ultimately, Nathan, in my opinion, it has to go down to the manager.
Yeah.
It has to.
Before we finish up, John, we had a few messages in over the last couple of weeks about your trip to the 1970 World Cup. This came up a couple of weeks ago, just as we were finishing the programme. You mentioned how you were there for the final. Brazil's, well, some would say one of the greatest team performances there's ever been when they beat Italy in the final. And how you ended up going there. Tell us a bit more then about your trip to the 1970 World Cup.
Yeah, I think a magazine was sponsored by a big firm, and I can't remember what the magazine was or the firm, Nathan. And they ran a competition for people to write in the goalkeeper that they would send to Mexico.
Right,
on holiday. So they had all obviously supporters from all different clubs writing in who they would pick in that particular team. And if their name came out in a draw, right, they could go with the goalkeeper they picked.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at that time, it was Gary Sprague, right, who actually was picked in the team, right?
You can't have been happy about that.
I won't say any more at the moment. But in other words, if you wrote in to pick Gary team and obviously lots of other people would write in. But if your name was picked out, you were on the tour with Gary Sprague.
Right.
So it went through the team. Like I was picked, Billy Bremner was picked before me actually, and his wife didn't want to go, so he said to me, "Do you want to come wee man. He called me a wee man. I said, oh, yeah, it'd be a good trip. As it happened, I was picked myself.
Right.
So
Either way, you were going as either Billy Bremner's +1 initially, and then you got in.
Yes, and I got picked myself. So that was the build-up to it, to go to Mexico for the 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, Nathan. So that was the start of it. So I'll give you the team. Do you want the team?
Yeah, go through the team there then.
Okay. You had Gary Sprake in goal.
Yeah.
Chris Gawler from Liverpool. Terry Hennessy from Notts Forest. John Gregg from Rangers. And Peter Rodriguez from, I think it was either Southampton or Leicester at that time. And then there was Billy Bremner and myself and Bobby Hope, who played for us for West Brom. And up front, we had Jimmy Greenough, who had been at Leeds and was at Stoke. Colin Steen, who had played, I think, at Rangers and also at Coventry. And a lad called Hugh Curran, who played for Wolves. Actually, he came from Dublin originally, I think, from his Scottish parents, to Manchester United. I think he might have came along with Eamon Dunphy, and he didn't make it. I think he went back home and then came over to an English club and then was transferred to Wolves, and he scored a lot of goals at Wolves, and he was picked for the Scottish team.
And were you there, John, on a junket, on the lash, on a holiday, or did you have to play a game while you were there?
Well, whatever way you want to describe it.
All of those things.
A holiday or a junket. So we weren't there to do anything, Nathan. So it was a terrific trip. No, they did it really well. We were based in Guadalajara, where England were playing, and we then moved to Mexico City for the finals.
Yeah. And when you're in Guadalajara, then
a week or two in Acapulco.
Right. So it was quite a trip.
It was good trip. Yeah.
And when you're where England are, like that's an England squad that has Big Jack is in the England squad. Norman Hunter is there. Are you hanging around with the England squad, or are you trying to keep yourselves to yourselves, or?
No, mostly to ourselves because they were playing. But we went out one evening to see them, because I knew, as you say, I knew a few with Norman and Jack, and Nobby was in the squad as well, and Billy knew a few of the lads. So they were having a night off, so we had a drink with them. But that was all. I mean, the rest of the time we were out of the way, but we could play golf there.
Right.
And it showed that there was a sad element to it, in my opinion, because one of the lads that was over there on another, actually doing a little bit of work for the company, Roger Hunt.
Yeah.
And the company was working for went bust.
Right. This is the former Liverpool player, Roger Hunt.
Yeah, well, he'd been a star in the 66 World Cup. I mean, that shows you what football like. He didn't get an invitation or anything. And Roger was stuck then, but luckily enough we were there, so he could come down to our hotel and have his meals and that, because they thought he was just one of our lads.
Wow.
But poor old Roger, and he was a great lad, a real gent, And Roger was a terrific lad. But that was from being a World Cup winner in '66 to '70. He was on this thing as it, and the blooming company went bust on him. But he played golf for us. We could get when we used to go out to the golf club there, Nathan, and they thought we were part of the English setup.
Right, so they treat you well.
So they used to let us on,
Yeah.
And they found out, and then kicked us off.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.